Lord Edgware Dies by Agatha Christie. The memory of the public is short. Already the intense interest and excitement aroused by the murder of George Alfred St. Vincent Marsh, 4th Baron Edgware, is forgotten. My friend Hercule Poirot was never openly mentioned in connection with the case. The credit went elsewhere, and that is how he wished it to be. Moreover, from Poirot's own point of view, the case was one of his failures. He swears that it was the chance remark of a stranger that put him on the right track. However, but for Poirot, I doubt if the crime would have been brought home to its perpetrator. I feel that the time has come for me to set down all I know of the affair, fulfilling the wishes of a fascinating lady in so doing. I begin my narrative at a London theatre in June of last year. Carlotta Adams was the rage, an American girl with the most amazing talent for single-handed sketches, unhampered by makeup or scenery. Her sketch of an evening in a foreign hotel was really wonderful. In turn, American tourists, German tourists, middle-class English families, questionable ladies, and weary waiters all flitted across the scene. Her program closed with what she announced as some imitations. Her last impersonation was Jane Wilkinson, a talented young American actress. Inanities slipped off her tongue, charged with powerful emotional appeal, so that in spite of yourself you felt that each word was uttered with some fundamental meaning. Her voice, with a deep, husky note in it, was intoxicating. The restrained gestures, the slightly swaying body, the impression even of strong physical beauty. How Miss Adams did it, I cannot think. I had always been an admirer of the beautiful Jane Wilkinson, and it was a little uncanny to watch that poignant gesture of the slowly closing and unclosing hand and the sudden throwback of the head that I realized she always gave at the close of a dramatic scene. 3 years ago, Jane Wilkinson had left the stage and married the wealthy but eccentric Lord Edgware. Rumour went that she left him shortly afterwards. At any rate, 18 months after the marriage, she was acting for the films in America, and had this season appeared in a successful play in London. Watching Carlotta Adams, it occurred to me to wonder how imitations were regarded by the subjects selected. Were they pleased at the advertisement it afforded, or were they annoyed at a deliberate exposing of the tricks of their trade? I decided that I should be very much annoyed. One would need a distinct sense of humour to appreciate such a merciless exposé. I had just arrived at these conclusions when the delightful husky laugh from the stage was echoed from behind me. I turned my head sharply. In the seat immediately behind was Jane Wilkinson, an expression of delight and excitement in her eyes. She applauded loudly, turning to her companion, a tall Greek god-type. Brian Martin, the hero of the screen, most popular at the moment. "Marvellous, isn't she?" said Lady Edgware. On arrival at Regent Gate, we were shown into the library. In a minute or two, the young man came in. There was an easy smile on his face, which changed a little as he cast a quick glance over us. His lips tightened. "Hello, Inspector. Having some grains of intelligence, I strongly suspect that my beautiful alibi has gone off in smoke. Exit the useful Dortheimers. Taxi driver, I suppose? All the same, you know, if I had really been planning a deed of violence, I shouldn't have hired a taxi and driven straight to the place and kept the fellow waiting. Have you thought of that? Ah, I see Monsieur Poirot has. It has occurred to me, yes. Such is not the manner of premeditated crime." Ronald drew a deep breath. "Well, I'm going to tell you the truth. I was in a hole for money. I had to get it by the next day. I tried my uncle. He'd no love for me, but I thought he might care for the honour of his name. But he proved to be lamentably modern in his cynical indifference. Then, by chance, I met my cousin at the opera. She suggested I should take her pearls. They belonged to her mother." He paused. There was something like real emotion, I think, in his voice. "Well, I accepted the blessed child's offer. I could raise the money I wanted on them, and I swore I'd turn to and redeem them, even if it meant working to manage it. But the pearls were at Regent Gate, so we jumped into a taxi and off we went. We made the fellow stop on the opposite side of the street in case anyone should hear the taxi draw up. Geraldine would go and quietly get the pearls and bring them out to me. She didn't expect to meet anyone, except possibly a servant. Off Dinah went. I stood on the pavement, and then every now and then I looked over towards the house to see if she was coming. A man passed me, and to my surprise went up the steps and let himself in to number 17. At least, I thought it was number 17. That surprised me very much for two reasons. One was that the man had let himself in with a key, and the second was that I thought I recognized in him a certain well-known actor. I happened to have my own key to the house in my pocket. I'd been meaning to give it back to my uncle that morning. However, in the heat of our discussion it had slipped my memory, and I transferred it with the other contents of my pockets when I changed. I crossed the road and opened the door with my key. The hall was empty. I stood for a minute. Then I went towards the library door. Perhaps the man was in with my uncle. I stood outside the library door, but I heard nothing. I suddenly felt I'd made the most abject fool of myself. The man must have gone into the house beyond, and a pretty fool I should look if my uncle were to come up and find me. I tiptoed back towards the front door, and at the same moment Geraldine came down the stairs with the pearls in her hand. I got her out of the house, and then explained. We hurried back to the opera, got there just as the curtain was getting up. I know what you'll say. Why didn't I tell you this right away? And I put it to you, would you, with a motive for murder sticking out a yard, admit light-heartedly that you'd actually been at the place the murder was committed on the night in question? Japp stared at him. Miss Marsh agreed to this concealment? Yes, I know it looks bad, but I can give you the name and address of the man who let me have the cash on Geraldine's pearls, and she'll confirm every word I've told you. Japp continued to look expressionless. Do you deny that you offered Carlotta Adams the sum of $10,000 to impersonate Miss Jane Wilkinson that night? Ronald stared. Offered her $10,000? Nonsense. I haven't got $10,000 to offer. His face had whitened. I understand all this. It's true what I told you. I suppose you don't believe me. Any of you. And then, to my amazement, Poirot stepped forward. Yes, he said. I believe you. The theatre gave Poirot Carlotta's address. Poirot was in a fever of impatience. If I am not too late, Hastings, if I am not too late. What is all this haste? What does it mean? It means that I have been terribly slow to realize the obvious. Ah, mon Dieu, if only we may be in time. At Resdew Mansions, Miss Adams' fat door was opened by a middle-aged woman, her eyelids reddened as though with weeping. Miss Adams? Demanded Poirot eagerly. The woman looked at him. She's dead. Took an overdose of a sleeping draught. Oh, the pity of it. Veronal, the doctor said it was. Poirot's face had gone deadly pale. I must come in. I am a detective, and I have to inquire into the circumstances of your mistress's death. From there on, Poirot took command of the situation. Now, he said authoritatively, please give me the name and address of the doctor you summoned. Dr. Heath, 17 Carlisle Street, and your own name? Bennet. Alice Bennet. It must have been a great shock to you, he observed gently. Oh, it was, sir. I took her in her tea, and there was something not quite natural about the way she lay. I went and touched her hand. Icy cold it was, sir. And I cried out. She stopped, tears coming into her eyes. Yes, yes, said Poirot sympathetically. It must have been terrible for you. Did Miss Adams often take stuff to make her sleep? Only something for a headache now and again, sir. Did anyone come to see her last night? A visitor? No, sir. She was out yesterday evening, sir, from about 7 o'clock. Ah, how was she dressed? She had on a black dress, sir, and a black hat and grey gloves. Poirot looked at me. Did she wear any jewellery? Just the pearls she always wore, sir. Ah, now describe to me, if you will, what her manner was. She kept smiling to herself, as though there was some kind of joke on. Poirot nodded. What time did she return? A little after 12 o'clock, sir. She was terribly tired, but pleased about something. She started to ring someone up, and then she said she'd do it tomorrow morning. Ah, Poirot's eyes gleamed. Did you hear the name of the person she rang up? No, sir. And the number she called? Do you recollect that? It was a Victorian number, and that's all I can remember. It is possible that I am wrong. Yes, it is possible. I will see the doctor. His eye fell on a small suitcase that was lying on a chair. Did Miss Adams take that with her when she went out last night? In the morning she took it, sir. She didn't have it when she came back at 6 o'clock, but she brought it back last thing. Ah, you permit that I open it? Alice Bennet would have assented to anything Poirot suggested. The case was not locked. You see, Hastings, you see, he murmured excitedly as he threw back the lid. There was a box of make-up materials, a pair of grey gloves, and folded in tissue paper, an exquisitely made wig of golden hair, the exact shade of Jane Wilkinson's. I doubted no longer. Poirot closed the case again and turned to the maid. You do not know with whom Miss Adams dined yesterday evening? No, sir. Do you know with whom she had lunch or tea? I know nothing about tea, sir. I believe she lunched with Miss Driver, her great friend. She has a hat shop in Moffat Street. Genevieve, it's called. But one thing more. Can you remember anything at all that Mademoiselle Adams said or did after she came in at 6 o'clock that strikes you as unusual? Can't say that I do, sir. She was writing letters till just on the time she went out. Well, just one letter, to her sister in Washington. She took the letter out with her to post, but she forgot it. Then it is here still? No, sir. She remembered last night, just as she was getting into bed, and I said I'd run out with it. Did you shut the door of the flat behind you? Bennet stared. No, sir. I just left it too. Would you like to see her, sir? Asked the maid cheerfully. Looks beautiful, she does. We followed her into the bedroom. Carlotta Adams looked peaceful, like a tired child asleep. There was a strange expression on Poirot's face as he stood gazing down on her. I saw him make the sign of the cross. J'ai fait un serment, Hastings, he said, as we went down the stairs. I did not ask him what his vow was. I could guess. A minute or two later he said, There is one thing off my mind at least. I could not have saved her. By the time I heard of Lord Edgware's death, she was already dead. That comforts me very much. After the theatre, Poirot and I went on to supper at the Savoy, and at the next table to ours were Lady Edgware, Brown Martin, and two people whom I did not know. As I pointed them out to Poirot, another couple took their places at the table beyond that again. The woman's face was familiar, yet I could not place it. Then I realized that it was Carlotta Adams, the man I did not know. Carlotta Adams was dressed inconspicuously in black. Hers was one of those mobile faces that lend themselves to the art of mimicry, but had no very recognizable character of its own. Poirot darted a sharp glance at the two tables, "Sir, that is Lady Edgware," he said. "She is a belle femme, and a fine actress, too. Possibly. I think if she is the center of the play, yes, then she could play her part. I doubt if she could play a small part adequately, or even a character part. The play must be written about her and for her. She appears to me of the type of women who are interested only in themselves." He added rather unexpectedly, "Such people go through life in great danger." "Danger?" "Oh, yes, mon ami, because you see, a woman like that sees only one thing, herself. Such women see nothing of the million conflicting interests and relationships of life. No, they see only their own forward path, and so, sooner or later, disaster." "And the other?" "Miss Adams, elle est artiste," said Poirot simply. "But there is one avenue of danger, I think. I have heard that she is a very hard negotiator over her payment, always seeking more. Love of money might lead such a one from the prudent and cautious path. You or I would see the danger involved. We could weigh the pros and cons. If you care for money too much, it is only the money you see. Everything else is in shadow." I laughed. "Esmeralda the Gypsy Queen is in good form," I remarked teasingly. "One cannot be interested in crime without being interested in psychology," returned Poirot, unmoved. "It is not the mere act of killing. It is what lies behind it that appeals to the expert. I have noticed that when we work on a case together, you are always urging me on to physical action, Hastings. You wish me to measure footprints, to analyze cigarette ash. You never realize that by lying back in an armchair with the eyes closed, one can come nearer to the solution of any problem. One sees then with the eyes of the mind. The little grey cells, they and they only, can be trusted to lead one through fog to the truth." My attention wandered to the 4 people sitting at the next table. When Poirot's monologue drew to a close, I remarked with a chuckle, "You have made a hit, Poirot. Lady Edgware can hardly take her eyes off you. Doubtless she has been informed of my identity. I think it's the famous moustaches. She's carried away by their beauty. By Jove, I believe she's coming to speak to us." Sure enough, Jane Wilkinson swept impetuously over to our table. "Monsieur Hercule Poirot, isn't it?" said the husky voice. "Monsieur Poirot, I must talk to you privately. We'll go right upstairs to my suite." Bras Martin had joined her, and spoke with a deprecating laugh. "Jane, we're in the middle of supper, and so is Monsieur Poirot. Well, what does that matter? We'll have supper sent up to the suite. Speak to them about it. Oh, and Brian—" She went after him, and appeared to urge some course upon him. With a shrug of the shoulders, he gave way. Jane came back, radiant. "We'll go right up now," she said, and included me in a dazzling smile. The question of our agreeing or not agreeing to her plan didn't seem to occur to her. "It's the greatest luck just seeing you here this evening, Monsieur Poirot," she said as she led the way to the lift. "I'd just been wondering what on earth I was going to do, and I looked up, and there you were, and I said to myself, Monsieur Poirot will tell me what to do. Somebody's got to get me out of the tangle I'm in, and you're just the man to do it." We were in our rooms. Speaking slowly and carefully, my friend said, "Japp, we are wrong. It is grievous to admit it, but we have made a mistake. It is deplorable. It grieves me to the heart. If harm, if loss of prestige comes to you through listening to my little ideas, I shall blame myself bitterly." At Poirot's expression of extreme melancholy, Japp shouted with laughter. Poirot looked affronted. "Oh, sorry, Monsieur Poirot." Japp wiped his eyes. "But you did look for all the world like a dying duck in a thunderstorm." Now, look here, let's forget all this. I'm willing to shoulder the credit or the blame of this affair. Poirot gazed at him mildly and sadly. You have the confidence, always the confidence. You never stop and say to yourself, can it be so? You never doubt or wonder. You never think, this is too easy. You bet your life I don't. What's the harm in a thing be easy? Poirot sighed. Symphony, I will say no more. Splendid, said Japp heartily. Now, I saw the Honourable Geraldine, and her story tallied exactly with his lordship's. It's my opinion he bluffed her. She's 3 parts sweet on him anyway. Took on terribly when she found he was arrested. What about the pearls? I asked. Was that part of the story true? Absolutely. As I see it, the plan came into his head when he came across his cousin at the opera. I fancy he'd been meditating something of the kind. That's why he had the key with him. He sees that by involving his cousin, he gains additional security for himself. He plays on her feelings, hints at the pearls, she plays up, and off they go. As soon as she's in the house, he follows her in and goes along to the library. In 2 seconds he's done the trick and he's out again. Of course, the next morning he has to pledge the pearls. He must still seem to be in need of the money. Then, when he hears of the crime, he frightens the girl into concealing their visit to the house. And if he isn't guilty, why did he persuade the Adams girl to take on that stunt? There can be only one reason for that stunt: to protect the real criminal. There I am of accord with you absolutely. It might be he who actually spoke to Miss Adams, whilst really... No, that is an imbecility. He looked at Japp and rapped. What is your theory as to her death? Japp grimaced. I'm inclined to believe accident. An instance of the infernal luck criminals sometimes have. Otherwise, I think Marsh had his plans for dealing with her. First, he'd tell her she'd be arrested for murder if she confessed the truth, and then he'd square her with a fresh lot of money. Does it strike you, Poirot stared straight in front of him, that Miss Adams will let another woman be hanged when she herself held evidence that would acquit her? Jane Wilkinson wouldn't have been hanged. The Montague Corner party evidence was too strong for that. But the murderer did not know that. He would have had to count on Jane Wilkinson being hanged and Carlotta Adams keeping silence. Oh, you're convinced Ronald Marsh can do no wrong. Do you believe his story about seeing a man sneak into the house? Do you know who he says he thought he was? The film star, Brian Martin. Chap, said Japp. Brian Martin wasn't even in London that night. He took a young lady to dine down at Molesey. They didn't get back to London till midnight. Girl who keeps a hat shop, Miss Adams' friend, Miss Driver. I think you all agree her testimony is past suspicion. Japp rose, ready to leave. Who was the Paris, November? Japp shrugged. Can't a girl have a souvenir 6 months ago without its having something to do with this crime? We must have a sense of proportion. 6 months ago. Dear, que je suis bête. Listen. Poirot rose and tapped Japp on the chest. Why does Miss Adams' maid not recognize that box? Why does Miss Driver not recognize it? Because the box was new. It had only just been given to her. Paris, November. Doubtless that is the date of which the box is to be a souvenir. But it was given to her now, not then. It has only just been bought. Investigate that, I implore you, my good Japp. It was bought abroad, probably Paris. Find out, I implore you. I so badly want, to know who is this mysterious D. Well, it'll do no harm, said Japp good-naturedly. I'll do what I can. Nodding cheerfully to us, he departed. It was nearly a fortnight later, at breakfast-time, when Poirot uttered a quick exclamation of pleasure, and handed me a letter. It ran as follows. Dear Monsieur Poirot, I was much touched by your very kind letter. Apart from my terrible grief, I have been so affronted by the things that have been hinted about Carlotta, the dearest, sweetest sister that a girl ever had. No, Monsieur Poirot, she did not take drugs. She had a horror of that kind of thing. If she played a part in that poor man's death, it was an entirely innocent one. But of course her letter to me proves that. I am sending you the actual letter itself, since you asked me to do so. I wish I could think of something to help you. You write with such understanding, and you seem to realize what Carlotta and I were to each other. Gratefully yours, Lucy Adams. The doctor the mate had called knew Poirot by repute, and expressed a lively pleasure at meeting him in the flesh. "And what can I do for you, Mr. Poirot?" "You were called this morning to the bedside of a Miss Carlotta Adams." "Ah, yes, poor girl. Clever actress, too. I've been twice to her shed. 1,000 pities it's ended this way." "You think she was addicted to drugs?" The doctor hesitated. "Well, I should hardly have said so. I don't suppose she took veronal every night, though she had evidently taken it for some time." He was peering into a small case. "Ah, here it is." He drew out a small black morocco handbag. "There's got to be an inquest. I brought this away so that LeMay shouldn't meddle with it." Opening the pochette, he took out a small gold box. On it were the initials C.A. in rubies, a valuable trinket. The doctor opened it. It was nearly full of a white powder. "Veronal," he explained briefly. Look what's written inside." On the inside of the lid was engraved, C.A. from D. Paris, November the 10th. Sweet dreams. "November the 10th, said Poirot thoughtfully. "Exactly. We're now in June. That seems to show that she's been in the habit of taking the stuff for, at least 6 months. Poirot turned out the contents of the pochette. There was a fine handkerchief with CMA in the corner, a powder puff, a lipstick, a pound note and a little change, and a pair of pince-nez. Curious. I did not know that Miss Adams wore glasses, but perhaps they are for reading." The doctor picked them up. "No, these are outdoor glasses, pretty powerful, too." He frowned thoughtfully. "I was called in a month ago to see the maid. Miss Adams was certainly not wearing glasses then." Poirot thanked the doctor, and we took our leave. Poirot wore a puzzled expression. "It can be that I am mistaken as to her death. It is possible that she was tired and strung up last night and determined to ensure herself a good night's rest. Then he suddenly stopped dead. No, 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 he declared. Why should that accident happen so conveniently? No. She played her part, and in doing so she signed her death warrant. Veronal may have been chosen simply because it was known that she occasionally took it. But if so, the murderer must have been someone who knew her well. I would give a good deal to know who D was. At Genevieve, we found ourselves in a small room full of hats. An imposing blonde creature came forward, with a suspicious glance at Poirot. "The Miss Driver?" asked Poirot. "I do not know if Morton can see her. What is your business, please?" Please tell Miss Driver that a friend of Miss Adams would like to see her." A black velvet curtain was violently agitated, and a small vivacious creature with flaming red hair emerged. "Yes? What do you want?" "You have heard the sad news, Miss Driver?" "What sad news?" "Miss Carlotta Adams died in her sleep last night, an overdose of veronal." "How awful!" she exclaimed. "Why? She was full of life yesterday." "Nevertheless, it is true, mademoiselle." "Now, will you do me the honor of coming to lunch with me and my friend? I want to ask you several questions." The girl looked him up and down. She reminded me of a fox terrier. "Who are you?" she demanded. "My name is Hercule Poirot. This is my friend Captain Hastings." I bowed. "I've heard of you," she said abruptly. "I'll come." We entered an opulent suite, where the actress sank onto a chair and exclaimed, "Monsieur Poirot, I've just got to get rid of my husband." "But, madame," Poirot said, his eyes twinkling, "the getting rid of husbands is not my speciality." It is a lawyer you require. Now that's where you're wrong. I'm just about sick and tired of lawyers. Lawyers just know the law. They don't seem to have any kind of natural sense. And you think I have? She laughed. I've heard that you're the cat's whiskers, Monsieur Poirot. Madame, me? I do not make the investigations for divorce. It is not pretty. I'm not asking you to do spying work, but I've just got to get rid of the man, and I'm sure you could tell me how to do it. When Poirot replied, there was a new note in his voice. First, tell me, madame, why are you so anxious to get rid of Lord Edgware? Why? I want to get married again. Her great blue eyes opened ingenuously. But surely a divorce should be easy to obtain. Oh, you don't know my husband, Monsieur Poirot. He's— She shivered. He's a strange man. His first wife ran away from him, left a baby of 3 months behind. He never divorced her, and she died miserably abroad. Then he married me. Well, I couldn't stick it. I was frightened. I left him, and I've no grounds for a divorce, and if I've given him grounds, he won't take notice of them. In certain American states you could obtain a divorce, madame. She shook her head. Well, that's no good to me if I'm going to live in England. Who is the man you want to marry? The Duke of Merton. I drew in my breath sharply. The Duke of Merton was the despair of matchmaking mammas. A violent Anglo-Catholic, he was reported to be completely under the thumb of his mother, the Dowager Duchess. I'm just crazy about him, said Jane sentimentally. And Merton Castle is too wonderful. The whole thing is the most romantic business that ever happened. He's so good-looking, too, like a dreamy kind of monk. In the meantime, Poirot said dryly, Lord Edgware stands in the way of these romantic dreams? Yeah, and it's driving me to distraction. If we were only in Chicago, I could get him bumped off quite easily. But you don't seem to run to gunmen over here. Poirot smiled. Over here, we consider that every human has the right to live. Well, I don't know about that. I guess you'd be better off without some of your politicians. An Edgware'd be no loss. But I don't want you to kill him for me, Monsieur Poirot. I thought perhaps you might argue with him in some clever way. Get him to give in to the idea of divorce. I think you overrate my persuasive powers, madame. Oh, but you can surely think of something, Monsieur Poirot. You'd like me to be happy, wouldn't you? Her voice was deliciously seductive. I should like everybody to be happy, said Poirot cautiously. Yeah, but I wasn't thinking of everybody. I was thinking of just me. He smiled. I should say you always do that, madame. You think I'm selfish? I dare say I am, but you see, I do so hate being unhappy, and I'm going to be so unhappy unless he agrees to a divorce, or dies. On the whole, it would be much better if he died. I mean, I'd feel more finally quit of him. You will help me, won't you, Monsieur Poirot? She rose and stood looking appealingly into his face. The door was ajar, and I heard the noise of voices outside. If you don't, she laughed, I'll have to call a taxi to go around and bump him off myself. Laughing, she disappeared into an adjoining room, just as Brian Martin came in with Carlotta Adams and her escort, and the 2 people who had been supping with him and Jane Wilkinson. They were introduced as Mr. and Mrs. Widburn. Jane appeared in the doorway of the bedroom. Have you got her? How marvelous! Miss Adams, I do admire your performance so. I felt I just had to know you. Come in here and talk to me when I fix my face. It's looking too perfectly frightful. Carlotta Adams accepted the invitation. Brian Martin flung himself down in a chair "Well, Monsieur Poirot," he said, "has our Jane persuaded you to fight her battles? You might as well give in sooner as later. She doesn't understand the word no." "Very interesting character, Jane," Brian Martin continued. "No morals whatever. Sees one thing only in life. What Jane wants." He laughed. "Ha! I believe she'd kill somebody quite cheerfully, and feel injured if they caught her and wanted to hang her for it. The trouble is that she would be caught. She hasn't any brains. Her idea of a murder would be to drive up in a taxi, sail in under her own name, and shoot. Ha!" Poirot looked at Brian Martin, a curious, speculative expression on his face. "So you read yourself to her. Why did you ask for the original of Carlotta Adams' letter?" "Hastings, as it stands, that letter is impossible. There is some fact about the letter which escapes us. I seek to discover what it is." And thereupon he resumed his study of the letter in question. Suddenly he uttered a cry. He was literally quivering with excitement. His eyes were green like a cat's. His pointing finger trembled. "See you, Hastings. Look here, quickly. Come and look." I ran to his side. Spread out before him was one of the middle sheets of Carlotta's letter. "See, all these other sheets, they have the clean edge. They are single sheets. But this one, see, one side of it is ragged. It has been torn. This letter was a double sheet, and so you comprehend. One page of the letter is missing. You see, the letter breaks off where she is talking of Captain Marsh and that she is sorry for him. Then she says, 'He enjoyed my show very much.' Then on the new sheet she goes on, 'He said, but, mon ami, a page is missing. The he of the new page may not be the he of the old page. In fact, it is not the he of the old page. It is another man altogether who proposed that hoax.' Observe, nowhere after that is the name mentioned. Ah, c'est épatant. Somehow or other, our murderer gets hold of this letter. No doubt he thinks to suppress it altogether, and then he sees another way of dealing with it. Remove one page, and the letter is capable of being twisted into a damning accusation of another man, a man who has a motive for Lord Edgware's death. Ah, it was a gift, the money for the confiture, as you say. He tears the sheet off and replaces the letter." Poirot drew a deep breath. "We still do not know where Carlotta Adams was between the time she left the flat at 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock when she left her suitcase at Euston Station. During that time, I believe that she met the murderer. Possibly they ate together. He gave her some last instructions. She may have been carrying the letter in her hand. She may have laid it down on the table. He sees the address and scents a possible danger. He may have picked it up adroitly, made an excuse for leaving the table, opened it, read it, torn out the sheet, and then either replaced it on the table or perhaps given it to her as she left, telling her that she had dropped it without noticing. The exact way of it was not important, but two things do seem clear. That Carlotta Adams met the murderer that evening, either before the murder of Lord Edgware or afterwards. And I have a fancy that it was the murderer who gave her the gold box. If so, the murderer is D." "I don't see the point of the gold box," I said. "Listen, Hastings. Carlotta Adams was not addicted to veronal. None of her friends nor her maid recognized the box. Why then was it found in her possession after she died? To create the impression that she did take veronal, and that she had taken it for a considerable time. Let us say that she met the murderer after the murder, if only for a few minutes. They had a drink together to celebrate the success of their plan, and in the girl's drink he put sufficient veronal to ensure that there should be no waking for her on the following morning." "Horrible," I said with a shudder. "Are you going to tell Japp all this?" "Not at the moment. What have I got to tell? He would say, the excellent Japp, another nest of the mare. The girl wrote to her sister on an odd sheet of paper. What can I say to that? Nothing. It is a thing that might have happened. I only know it did not happen because it is necessary that it should not have happened." He paused. A dreamy expression stole across his face. "Figure to yourself, Hastings. If only that man had had the order and the method, he would have cut that sheet, not torn it, and we should have noticed nothing. But nothing." "So we deduce that he is a man of careless habits," I said, smiling. No. Assuredly he was pressed for time. A man whose initial or whose nickname is D. We have got to find him, Hastings. Yes, we have got to find him." 5 minutes afterwards, we were sitting in a small restaurant in Dover Street. "I understand, mademoiselle," began Poirot, "that your friend lunched with you yesterday. Did she tell you what her plans were for last night?" "She wouldn't tell me anything definite. Said she promised not to, but she got something on in the nature of a gigantic hoax. I was sure that money was concerned. Nothing really ever excited Carlotta except money." "She did not actually say so?" Jenny hesitated. "No. Just said that she was going to get her sister over from America. She was crazy about her little sister." She shrugged. "That's all I know. Is that what you want?" Poirot nodded. "Yes." "Miss Driver, do you know if Miss Adams was acquainted with Lord Edgware?" Jenny frowned. "Oh, she mentioned him once, very bitterly. She said that he was the kind of man whose death would probably be a good thing for everybody." "When was it she said this, mademoiselle?" "About a month ago." "I remember thinking it odd that Carlotta should be so vehement when she didn't even know the man." Poirot nodded thoughtfully. "Now, Miss Driver, do you know if Miss Adams was in the habit of taking veronal?" "Not that I knew." "Did you ever see in her bag a small gold box with the initials C.A. on it in rubies?" "No." "Do you know where Miss Adams was last November?" She went back to the States in November, towards the end of the month. Before that she was in Paris." "Alone?" "Of course. Carlotta wasn't the week-ending sort, if that's what you're driving at." Poirot looked at her steadily. "Now, mademoiselle, I'm going to ask you a very important question. Was there any man Miss Adams was specially interested in?" "The answer's no. Strictly speaking." "And not speaking so strictly?" "I shouldn't wonder if lately Carlotta hadn't been getting interested in some man. She's been, abstracted." Poirot nodded. "Thank you, mademoiselle. One thing more. Is there any friend of Miss Adams whose initial is D?" "D? No, I'm sorry, I can't think of anyone." Poirot shook his head sadly, and Jenny Driver leant forward. "And now, am I going to be told anything?" "Mademoiselle, last night Lord Edgware was murdered in his library. At 10 o'clock yesterday evening, a lady whom I believe to have been your friend Miss Adams came to the house, asked to see Lord Edgware, and announced herself as Lady Edgware. She wore a golden wig and was made up to resemble the real Lady Edgware. Miss Adams left the house at 5 minutes past 10, but she did not return home till after midnight. She went to bed, having taken an overdose of veronal. Now, mademoiselle, you see the point, perhaps, of some of the questions I have been asking you." Jenny drew a deep breath. "Monsieur Poirot, you don't for one moment think that Carlotta did it? She was, well, too refined." Poirot nodded approvingly. "It is a point psychological, I agree. Another question. Did Miss Adams wear pince-nez?" "Never." Poirot frowned. "Did Miss Adams know Brian Martin, the film actor?" "Why, yes, she used to know him as a child. She thought he got very swollen-headed." Jenny looked at her watch. "Goodness, I must fly. Have I helped you at all, Monsieur Poirot?" "You have. I shall ask you for further help by and by." "It's yours. Someone staged this devilry. We've got to find out who it is." She gave us a quick shake of the hand, flashed her white teeth in a sudden smile, and left us, with characteristic abruptness. an interesting personality. I like her. A little hard, perhaps. The shock of her friend's death did not upset her as much as I should have thought it would have done. Sir, did you get what you hoped? Poirot shook his head. No. I very much hope to get a clue to the identity of D, the person who gave her the little gold box. There I have failed. But now, to work. We have still 2 possible clues, which are: the first is the telephone call to a Victoria number. It seems to me quite a probability that Carlotta Adams would ring up on her return to announce her success. On the other hand, where was she between 5 minutes past 10 and midnight? And the second clue? I asked. The letter, Hastings. The letter to her sister. It is possible that in that she may have described the whole business. But we must work now from the other end. What do you call the other end? A careful study of those who profit in any degree by Lord Edgware's death. I think myself our first point of attack should be a further interview with Mademoiselle Wilkinson. The supper party that followed was a merry one, yet there were undercurrents. Jane Wilkinson I acquitted of any subtleties. She had desired an interview with Poirot, and had obtained her desire. Now she was in high good humour. Brian Martin was certainly not behaving quite naturally, but that might be merely characteristic of a film star. Carlotta Adams was behaving naturally enough. She had, I thought, distinct charm, but it consisted in an absence of any jarring or strident note, as did her appearance. Soft, dark hair, eyes a rather colourless pale blue, pale face, and a mobile, sensitive mouth. A face that you would find it hard to know again if you were to meet her in different clothes. Then, just at that moment, Carlotta Adams looked across the table at her hostess, and it struck me that there was definite hostility in those pale eyes. Mr. Whitburn was a tall, cadaverous man, Mrs. Whitburn a plump, fair, gushing soul. They appeared to be wealthy people with a passion for the stage, unwilling to talk on any other subject. The last member of the party was Carlotta Adams' escort, a young man not so sober as he might have been. For the first half of the meal he sat in gloomy silence. Towards the latter half he unbosomed himself to me, apparently under the impression that I was one of his oldest friends. "What I mean to say," he said, "it isn't, there, old chap, if you take a girl, well, I mean, not as though I'd ever said a word to her I shouldn't have done. She's not the sort. Well, you let dash it, wine he is. What was I saying?" "That it was hard lines," I said soothingly. "Well, dash it all, it is. I had to borrow the mate who's been at it from my tailor. A obliging chap, my tailor. I've owed him money for years. Makes a sort of bond between us. Nothing like a bond, is there, dear old fellow? You and I. You and I. Who the devil are you, by the way?" "My name is Hastings." "You don't say so. I could have sworn you were dear old Spencer Jones. Met him at the Eton and Harrow and borrowed a fiver from him." He shook his head, then cheered up, and drank off some more champagne. "Look on the bright side, my boy," he adjured me. "One of these days I'm going to be a rich man when my uncle dies. Then I can pay my tailor." He sat smiling happily at the thought. There was something strangely likeable about the young man. He had a round face and an absurdly small black moustache. Carlotta Adams, after a glance in his direction, rose and broke up the party. "It was just sweet of you to come up here," said Jane. "I do so love doing things on the spur of the moment. Don't you?" "No," said Miss Adams. "I'm afraid I always plan a thing out very carefully before I do it. It saves worry." "Well, the results justify you," laughed Jane. "I don't know when I enjoyed anything so much as I did your show." The American girl's face relaxed. "Well, that's very sweet of you," she said warmly. Carlora," said the young man, "say thank you for the party to Aunt Jane and Carlora." The way he walked straight through the door was a miracle of concentration. Carlotta followed him quickly. "Well," said Jane, "what was that to blow in and call me Aunt Jane?" "My dear," said Mrs. Whitburn, "you mustn't take any notice of him. Now, Charles and I positively must toddle." The Whitburns duly toddled, and Brown Martin went with them. Jane Wilkinson looked at Poirot. "Well, Monsieur Poirot?" He smiled at her. "Eh bien, Lady Edgware?" "For goodness' sake, don't call me that, if you aren't the hardest-hearted little man." "But no, I am not hard-hearted." Poirot, I thought, had had quite enough champagne. "Then you'll go and see my husband, and make him do what I want?" "I will go and see him," Poirot promised cautiously, "and if he turns you down, as he will, you'll think of a clever plan? They say you're the cleverest man in England, Monsieur Poirot." "Madame, I promise nothing. But in the interest of the psychology, I will endeavor to arrange a meeting with your husband." On the following day, Japp rang. Poirot's face dropped ludicrously as he spoke to the inspector. "Are you sure? I must rearrange my ideas." He replaced the receiver. "Well?" I asked impatiently. "Hastings, that gold box was bought in Paris. It was ordered by letter, and the letter was supposedly from a Lady Ackley. Naturally, there is no such person. The letter was received 2 days before the murder. It ordered the initials in rubies and the inscription inside. It was a rush order, to be called for the following day. A woman called for it, Hastings. Short, middle-aged, and wearing pince-nez." We looked at each other, completely baffled. It was on the day after that we went to the Whitburns' luncheon party at Terriges. Poirot had been very uncommunicative ever since the news from Paris, and I really felt glad of the luncheon party as a means of distraction. Young Donald Ross was there, and came up and greeted me cheerily. He was put next to me at table. Jane Wilkinson sat almost opposite us, and next to her sat the Duke of Merton. I fancied that perhaps an X-ray of common sense was dissipating the mists of intoxicated love. It was a rather humiliating gaffe on Jane's part that gave me that impression. Somebody had uttered the phrase, "Judgment of Paris," and straight away Jane's delightful voice was uplifted. "Paris? Why, Paris doesn't cut any ice nowadays. It's London and New York that count." On my right, I heard Donald Ross draw his breath sharply. Mrs. Whitburn began to talk violently about Russian opera. Everyone hastily said something to somebody else. The Duke had flushed, and, it seemed to me, as though he drew slightly away from Jane. I turned and chatted to Ross, who answered in monosyllables. It was then that I noticed Brown Martin. He was a little way further down the table, on my side, and was chatting with great animation to a pretty blonde woman. He looked younger and in every way more fit. He was laughing, and seemed in first-rate spirits. Poirot had to leave early, and while I was waiting to make our adieus to Mrs. Whitburn, somebody touched me on the shoulder. It was young Ross. "Isn't Monsieur Poirot here? I wanted to speak to him." Ross looked white and strained. "Something rather strange has happened, something that I'd like Monsieur Poirot's advice about, because I don't know what to do." "Poirot is going to keep an appointment, but I know he means to be back at 5 o'clock. Why not bring him up then, or come and see him?" "Thanks, I think I will. You see, it might, just might, be very important." I nodded, and turned again to where Mrs. Whitburn was dispensing honeyed words and limp handshakes. It was 20 minutes to 5 when Poirot returned. He was twinkling and clearly in a good humour. The telephone rang. "That's probably Donald Ross. He wants to see you about something." Poirot took up the receiver. I was so close that I could hear Ross's voice. "Monsieur Poirot, look here, there's something that seems to me a bit odd. It's in connection with Lord Edgware's death. It may seem just nonsense to you. It was Paris set me off. You—" Very faintly, I heard a bell trilling. Half a second," said Ross. There was the sound of the receiver being laid down. 2 minutes passed. 3 minutes. 4 minutes. 5 minutes. Poirot moved the hook up and down and spoke to the exchange. He turned to me. "The receiver is still off at the other end, but there is no reply. Quick, Hastings, look up Ross's address in the telephone book. We must go there at once." "I am afraid, Hastings," Poirot said in the taxi. "I am afraid. We are up against somebody who has already struck twice. And Ross spoke to you, you say, with people all around. Madness, utter madness. Shall we never arrive?" We were there at last. Ross lived in a maisonette on the first floor of a house in a big square in Kensington. Poirot sprang up the stairs. On the first floor was a kind of partition, and a narrow door with a Yale lock. Ross's card was stuck in the centre of the door. We paused there. Everywhere there was dead silence. I pushed Ross's door. To my surprise, it yielded. And in a tiny dining room, fallen sideways from a chair and sprawled across the table, was Ross. Poirot bent over him. He straightened up. His face was white. "He's dead, stabbed at the base of his skull." We found the lady trying on yet another black hat before the glass. "Why, Monsieur Poirot, sit down. Alice, clear something, will you?" "Madame, you look charming." Jane looked serious. "Monsieur Poirot." She clasped her hands, her husky voice dropped. She looked like an angel, about to give vent to thoughts of exquisite holiness. "It all seems so miraculous, if you know what I mean. Here I am, all my troubles over. No tiresome business of divorce, no bothers. Just my path cleared, and all plain sailing. It makes me feel almost religious, if you know what I mean." "That is how it strikes you, madame, eh?" "Things happen right for me," said Jane in a sort of awed whisper. "I thought and I thought lately, if Edgware was to die, and there he's dead. It's almost like an answer to prayer." Poirot cleared his throat. "I cannot say I look at it quite like that, madame. Somebody killed your husband. Has it not occurred to you to wonder who that someone was?" She stared at him. "What does it matter? I mean, what's that got to do with it? The Duke and I can be married in about 4 or 5 months. With difficulty, Poirot controlled himself. "Madame, has it not occurred to you to ask yourself who killed your husband? Does it not interest you to know?" "Well, not very much," she admitted. "Well, I am going to make it my business to find out." "Are you? How funny." She slipped on a satin coat and studied herself in the glass. "You do not object, eh?" said Poirot. "Why, of course not, Monsieur Poirot. I should just love you to be clever about it all. I wish you every success." She wriggled her shoulders experimentally and took up the hand-glass. "Madame," said Poirot in a loud, emphatic voice, "who do you think killed your husband?" Jane threw him a startled glance. "Geraldine, I expect." "Who is Geraldine?" But Jane's attention was gone again. "Alice, take this up a little on the right shoulder, so." "What, Monsieur Poirot?" "Oh, Geraldine's his daughter." "No, Alice, the right shoulder." "Oh, must you go, Monsieur Poirot? I'm terribly grateful for the divorce, even though it isn't necessary after all. I shall always think you were wonderful." I only saw Jane Wilkinson once again, when I sat opposite her at a luncheon party. but I always think of her as I saw her then, absorbed, heart and soul, in clothes. Her lips carelessly throwing out the words that were to influence Poirot's further actions. Her mind concentrated firmly and beautifully on herself. "Épatant," said Poirot with reverence as we emerged into the Strand. There was a letter sent by hand lying on the table when we got back to our rooms. "Dear Sir," it ran, "I hear you were at the house this morning. I am sorry not to have had the opportunity of speaking to you. If convenient to yourself, I should be much obliged if you could spare me a few minutes any time this afternoon. Yours truly, Geraldine Marsh." "We will go round at once, my friend," Poirot said. It was a few days later that Poirot flung across a letter that he had just opened. "Well, mon ami, what do you think of that?" The note was from Lord Edgware, and made an appointment for the following day at 11. I had had no idea that Poirot had actually taken steps to carry out his promise. His eyes twinkled. "But yes, mon ami, it was not solely the champagne. The best and driest of champagne, the most golden-haired and seductive of women, nothing influences the judgment of Hercule Poirot. Non, mon ami, what intrigues me is the psychology of the matter, the interplay of character. I welcome the chance of studying Lord Edgware at close quarters." At that moment we were told that a gentleman had called. To our great surprise, our visitor proved to be Brian Martin, who looked older by daylight. "Good morning, Monsieur Poirot," he said in a cheerful manner. "I suppose you're very busy just now." Poirot smiled amiably. "No, at the moment I have practically no business on hand." "Well, that's luck. Perhaps you'll take on something for me." His laugh was rather nervous. "Ha! The whole business started in America. I was traveling by train to New York, and I noticed a certain fellow, ugly little chap, clean-shaven, glasses, and a gold tooth." "Ah, a gold tooth," said Poirot. Brown nodded. "Exactly. 6 months later, I was in Los Angeles, and I noticed the fellow again. A month afterwards, I had occasion to go to Seattle, and shortly after I got there, who should I see but my friend again? Only this time he wore a beard." "Distinctly curious," Poirot observed. "Wasn't it? Well, when I saw the man again in Los Angeles, beardless, in Chicago with a moustache and different eyebrows, and in a mountain village disguised as a hobo, well, it seemed odd. But not a doubt about it, I was being shadowed. Fortunately, owing to the gold tooth, I could always spot him." "But, Monsieur Martin, did you never speak to the man, question him as to the reason of his shadowing?" "No, I didn't." The actor hesitated. "It seemed to me that I should merely put the fellow on his guard and learn nothing. Once they had discovered that I had spotted him, they would have put someone else on my track, someone whom I might not recognize." "En effet, someone without that useful gold tooth? Now, Monsieur Martin, you refer to they. Whom did you mean by they?" Brown hesitated. "Oh, it was a mere figure of speech. I assumed, I don't know why, a nebulous they in the background." "You mean you have no conception of who could want you shadowed, or for what purpose?" Brown said slowly. "I have an idea. It concerns a certain incident that took place in London about 2 years ago. But you see," he sounded embarrassed, "I can't tell you about it, you see. A girl was concerned in it, Monsieur Poirot. If I get her permission, will you look into the matter for me? What I mean is, if you investigate the affair, nothing need be made public, need it?" "That depends," said Poirot calmly. "If there is any question of crime—" "Oh, there's no crime concerned." Poirot looked thoughtful, then said, "This shadow, of what age was he?" "Oh, about 30. "Ah, That is remarkable. Yes, that makes the whole thing very interesting. We stared at him. Much more interesting, murmured Poirot. Brown Martin seemed at a loss what to do next. He started making desultory conversation. "Ha! An amusing party the other night. I'm devoted to Jane, though in some ways I don't think she's quite over her. She's amoral. Right and wrong don't exist for her. We were talking of crime just now. Well, it would never surprise me if Jane committed a crime. I can see her killing, and quite easily. I mean, if anyone were in her way, she'd just remove them without a thought. She'd just think that anyone who interfered with Jane Wilkinson had got to go." There was bitterness in his last words, and I wondered what memory he was recalling. "You think she would do murder?" Poirot watched him intently. Brown drew a deep breath. "'Pon my soul, I do. I know her, you see. She'd kill as easily as she'd drink her morning tea." "I mean it, Monsieur Poirot." "Yes," said Poirot quietly. "I can see you mean it." Then, with a change of tone, Brown Martin said, "As to this business we've been talking about, I'll let you know, Monsieur Poirot. You will undertake it, won't you?" "Yes, I will. I find it interesting." I went downstairs with Brown Martin, and when I rejoined my friend, I said, "Poirot, what was the point about the age of the shadower?" "You do not see my poor Hastings?" He smiled and shook his head. "What did you think of our interview? Do not certain ideas suggest themselves to you, mon ami?" The telephone ringing at that moment saved me from the ignominy of admitting that no ideas whatever suggested themselves to me. I took up the receiver. A woman's voice, crisp, efficient. "This is Lord Edgware's secretary speaking. Lord Edgware regrets that he must cancel the appointment with Monsieur Poirot for tomorrow morning. He has to go over to Paris unexpectedly. He could see Monsieur Poirot at 12:15 today, if that would be convenient." For long afterwards the events of that afternoon remained like a nightmare in my mind. I could not rid myself of a dreadful feeling of responsibility. Much later that evening, when we were alone together, I stammered out to Poirot my bitter self-reproachings. No, Hastings, do not blame yourself. How could you have suspected? The good God has not given you a suspicious nature to begin with. We have no time to waste in regrets. The poor young man who is dead had something to tell us. Since he can no longer tell us, we have to guess, with only one little clue to guide us. "Paris," I said. "Yes, Paris. There is the word Paris engraved in the gold box. Paris, in November last. Miss Adams was there then. There is the short woman with the pince-nez who called for the box at the jeweller's there. The Duke of Merton was in Paris when the crime was committed. Lord Edgware was going to Paris. Possibly we have something there. Was he killed to prevent him going to Paris?" He sat down again, his brows drawn together. "What happened at that luncheon, Hastings? Was there some mention of France, of Paris?" I told him about Jane Wilkinson's gaffe. I seem to remember that Ross drew in his breath rather sharply. "And his manner when he spoke to you afterwards was bewildered. An idea has come to him. He thinks it preposterous, absurd. He hesitates to voice it. First he will speak to me, but alas, when he has made up his mind, I am already departed." "If he had only said a little more to me," I lamented. "At any rate, this murder cannot be put down to Ronald Marsh." "It is a point in his favour," Poirot said absent-mindedly. "But that does not concern us for the moment. Hastings, I once posed to myself 5 questions. They were: why did Lord Edgware change his mind on his subject of divorce? What is the explanation of the letter he said he wrote to his wife, and which she said she never got? Why was there that expression of rage on his face when we left his house that day? What were a pair of pince-nez doing in Carlotta Adams' handbag? Why did someone telephone to Lady Edgware at Chiswick and immediately rang off? Hastings, I have had in mind all along a certain little idea. 3 of those questions I have answered, and the answers accord with my little idea. But 2 of the questions I cannot answer. Either I am wrong as to the person, or else the answer to the 2 questions that I cannot answer is there all the time. Which is it, Hastings? Which is it? Rising, he went to his desk and took out the letter Lucy Adams had sent him. He laid it on the table and pored over it. I yawned and picked up a book. We had already gone over and over the letter. Suddenly Poirot uttered a low cry. Hastings! Hastings! Do you remember I said to you that if the murderer had been a man of order and method, he would have cut this page, not torn it? I was wrong. There is order and method throughout this crime. The page had to be torn, not cut. Look for yourself. I looked. Eh bien, do you not see, my friend? The page had to be torn. I shook my head. In a low voice, Poirot said, I have been blind, but now we shall get on. We will take a taxi. It is only 9 o'clock. Not too late to make a visit. Whom are we going to visit? We are going to Regent Gate. At Regent Gate, we were shown upstairs to a big drawing-room, and in a minute Geraldine Marsh came to us there. The tall, thin, white-faced girl with her big, haunting black eyes was a striking figure. It is very good of you to come so promptly, Monsieur Poirot. In what way can I be of service to you, mademoiselle? She hesitated, then said, On the day my father was killed, you came to see him. Why? Did he send for you? Was he afraid of something? I must know what my father dreaded. Were you so fond of your father then, mademoiselle? Fond of him? Fond of him? I... And suddenly peals of laughter broke from her. It's so funny. It's so funny to be asked that. The door opened, and Miss Carroll came in. Now, Geraldine, my dear, that won't do. No, hush now, I insist. No, stop it, at once. Her determined manner had its effect. Geraldine wiped her eyes and sat up. I'm sorry. I've never done that before. Miss Carroll was still looking at her anxiously. Geraldine smiled, a bitter smile. He asked me, she said in a cold voice, if I had been very fond of my father. Miss Carroll made a sort of indeterminate cluck. Geraldine went on, I wonder if it is better to tell lies or the truth. The truth, I think. I wasn't fond of my father, Monsieur Poirot. I hated my father. I am glad he is dead. It means freedom for me. Freedom. I am not in the least anxious to find his murderer. For all we know, the person who killed him may have had reasons, ample reasons, justifying that action. Poirot looked at her thoughtfully. That is a dangerous principle to adopt, mademoiselle. A person who has once killed nearly always kills again. One life is removed, perhaps after a terrific struggle with the murderer's conscience. Then, danger threatens. The second murder is morally easier. At the slightest threatening of suspicion, a third follows. Supposing I told you that already to save himself, the murderer has killed a second time. What's that, Monsieur Poirot? Cried Miss Carroll. Another murder? Where? Who? Poirot gently shook his head. It was an illustration only. I ask pardon. Ah, I see. For a moment I thought... Geraldine, if you've finished talking nonsense... Geraldine got up. She smoothed back her hair. I'm sorry. I'm afraid I've been making rather a fool of myself. You still refuse to tell me why my father called you in? Called him? Said Miss Carroll in lively astonishment. You must understand. Your father did not call me in. I sought an interview with him on behalf of a client. That client was Lady Edgware. Oh, I see. "I've been very foolish," she said slowly. "I thought my father had perhaps believed himself menaced by some danger. Oh, he was stupid." "Do you believe Lady Edgware committed the murder, mademoiselle?" She shook her head. "No, I don't. She's much too, well, artificial. And I think that if she wanted to kill someone, she would use poison. I cannot imagine her using a knife." "I don't see who else could have done it," said Miss Carroll. At that moment the door opened, and a man came in, then stopped awkwardly. "Sorry, I didn't know anyone was in here." Geraldine made a mechanical introduction. "My cousin Lord Edgware, Monsieur Poirot. It's all right, Ronald. You're not interrupting." "Sure, Dinah. How do you do, Monsieur Poirot? Are your grey cells functioning ever a particular family mystery?" It was Carlotta Adams' escort on the night of the supper party in Jane Wilkinson's suite, Captain Ronald Marsh, now Lord Edgware. Lord Edgware's house in Regent Gate was imposing, handsome, and slightly gloomy. The door was opened to us by one of the handsomest young men I have ever seen. Tall, fair, he might have posed to a sculptor for Apollo. He reminded me of someone, but who it was I could not for the life of me remember. Lord Edgware was a tall man of about 50. He had a thin face and a sneering mouth. "Monsieur Hercule Poirot, Captain Hastings, please be seated. I am familiar, of course, with your name, Monsieur Poirot. Who is not?" Poirot bowed at the compliment. "But I cannot understand your position in this matter. You say that you wish to see me on behalf of my wife?" "That is so. Lady Edgware desires a divorce. Her suggestion was that you and I should discuss the matter." "There is nothing to discuss," Lord Edgware said coldly. "You refuse, then?" "Refuse? Certainly not." Poirot was utterly taken aback. "Comment? What is this? You are willing to divorce your wife?" "Certainly. I wrote and told her so 6 months ago." "It is true, Monsieur Poirot, that when my wife suggested a divorce, I refused, point blank. 6 months ago she wrote to me urging the point. She wanted to marry again some film actor." His lips sneered. "My views had by this time undergone modification. I wrote to her at Hollywood, telling her so. I understood from Lady Edgware that she had approached you repeatedly through lawyers." "She did," replied Lord Edgware dryly. "Finally she wrote to me herself." "Why did you change your mind, Lord Edgware?" "Not on account of anything in her letter," he said sharply. "I had perceived the advantages of severing what I considered a degrading association." He rose. "You must forgive my altering the appointment. I have to go over to Paris tomorrow. A sale of works of art, as a matter of fact. I have my eye on a little statuette. A perfect thing in its way. A macabre way. I enjoy the macabre. I always have." I had been looking at the books in the shelves. There was a volume on the Comte de Sade, another on medieval tortures. I wondered exactly what kind of a man George Alfred St. Vincent Marsh, 4th Baron Edgware, was. As I closed the library door behind me, I glanced back into the room. That smiling face was transformed. The lips were drawn back from the teeth in a snarl. The eyes were alive with an almost insane rage. I wondered no longer that 2 wives had left Lord Edgware. Just as we reached the front door, a door on the right opened. A girl stood there. A tall, slender girl, with dark hair and a white face. Her eyes, dark and startled, looked for a moment into mine. Then, like a shadow, she shrank back. Out in the street, Poirot hailed a taxi and told the man to drive to the Savoy. "Well, Hastings," he said with a twinkle, "that interview did not go at all as I figured to myself it would." "Oh, indeed," I said. I related to him what I had seen, as I closed the study door, and he nodded thoughtfully. "I fancy that he is very near the borderline of madness, Hastings. I imagine he practices many vices, and hides a deep-rooted instinct of cruelty." "Poirot, did you notice a girl as we were coming out?" "Yes, mon ami. A young lady who was frightened and not happy. Probably his daughter. Ah, here we are. Now to acquaint her ladyship with the good news." Miss Carroll, brisk and neat, was clearly surprised to see Poirot. "There are a few points on which I should like information. Was Lord Edgware in Paris last November, and can you tell me the date of his visit?" She unlocked a drawer, took out a small bound book, turned the pages, and announced, "Lord Edgware went to Paris on November the 3rd and returned on the 7th. He also went over on November the 20th and returned on December the 4th. On the first occasion he went to see some statuettes which he thought of purchasing. On the second occasion he had no definite purpose in view so far as I know." "Did Mademoiselle Marche accompany her father on either occasion?" "She never accompanied her father on any occasion, Monsieur Poirot. At that time she was at a convent in Paris, but I do not think her father went to see her or took her out. At least, it would surprise me very much if he had. Why are you asking me these questions, Monsieur Poirot?" Poirot did not reply to this question. Instead he said, "Miss Marsh is very fond of her cousin, is she not? Much too fond of him, in my opinion, always has been." Poirot rose. "I must not detain you. Oh, by the way, did you know Carlotta Adams?" "I saw her act. Very clever." "Yes, she was clever." Reaching forward to get his gloves from the table where he had laid them, his cuff caught the chain of Miss Carroll's pince-nez and jerked them off. Poirot retrieved them and the gloves which he had dropped, uttering confused apologies. We had reached the door when Miss Carroll's voice recalled us. "Monsieur Poirot, these aren't my glasses. I can't see through them." Comment?" Poirot's face broke up into smiles. "Ah, imbecile that I am. My own glasses fell out of my pocket as I stooped to get the gloves and pick up yours. I have mixed the two pairs. They look very alike, you see." An exchange was made with smiles on both sides, and we took our departure. "Poirot," I said when we were outside, "you don't wear glasses. Those were the pince-nez in Carlotta Adams' handbag." "Correct." "But why did you think they might be Miss Carroll's?" Poirot shrugged his shoulders. "She is the only person connected with this case who wears glasses." "Were your questions about Paris mere camouflage?" I asked curiously. "Not entirely." "We still haven't solved the mystery of the initial D. It's odd that nobody to do with the case has an initial D, except Donald Ross himself, and he's dead." We were passing a big cinema. People were streaming out of it, and with a group of them we crossed the road. "Oh, I loved it," a girl was sighing. "I think Brown Martin's just wonderful. The way he rode down the cliff and got there in time with the papers." Her escort was less enthusiastic. "Idiotic story. If they just had the sense to ask Ellis right away." The rest was lost. Reaching the pavement, I turned back to see Poirot standing in the middle of the road. There was a jarring of brakes and some rich bus-driver language. In a dignified manner, Poirot walked to the curb. "Poirot, are you mad?" "No, it was just that something came to me at that moment. Ah, mon ami, I have been blind, deaf, insensible. Now I see the answers to all those questions. Yes, all 5 of them. Yes, I see it all. So simple, so childishly simple." The new Lord Edgware noticed the slight start I gave. "Ah, you've got it. Aunt Jay's little supper party, just a shade bottled, wasn't I?" Poirot was saying goodbye to Geraldine Marsh and Miss Carroll. "I'll come down with you," said Ronald genially. He led the way, talking as he went. "Rum thing, life. Kicked out one day, lord of the manor the next. My late unlamented uncle kicked me out 3 years ago. But I expect you know all about that, Monsieur Poirot. I had heard the fact mentioned, yes. Naturally. Think of that kind of sure to be dug up. The earnest sleuth can't afford to miss it. Ronald grinned and threw open the dining-room door. Have a spot before you go. Poirot refused, so did I. But the young man mixed himself a drink. Yes, to murder, he said cheerfully. He drained his glass, then said, Seriously, though, Monsieur Poirot, what are you doing here? A few days ago, Aunt Jane was dramatically declaiming, Who will rid me of this insolent tyrant? And lo and behold, she is ridded. Not by your agency, I hope. The perfect crime by Hercule Poirot, ex-sleuth-hound. Poirot smiled. I am here in answer to a note from Miss Geraldine Marsh. Very discreet. But what are you really doing here, huh? For some reason or other, you're interesting yourself in my uncle's death. I am always interested in murder, Lord Edgware. Very cautious. You should teach Aunt Jane caution. You'll excuse me calling her Aunt Jane. It amuses me. Did you see her blank face when I did it the other night? Hadn't the foggiest notion who I was. En vérité. Yeah. I was kicked out of here 3 months before she came along. The fatuous expression of good nature on his face failed for a moment. Then he went on lightly. Beautiful woman, but there's subtlety. Methods are rather crude, eh? Poirot shrugged. It is possible. Ronald looked at him curiously. I believe you think she didn't do it. So, she's got round you too, has she? I have a great admiration for beauty, but also for evidence. Lady Edgware was at a party at Chiswick last night at the time she was supposed to have been seen here. Ronald swore. So, she went after all. How like a woman. At 6 o'clock she was declaring that nothing on earth would make her go. When planning a murder, never depend upon a woman doing what she says she'll do. That's how the best-laid plans of murder gang agley. No, Monsieur Poirot, I'm not incriminating myself. No need for you to hunt round for someone who saw me in the offing, when Aunt Jane was declaring that she never, never would go out that night. I was there. So, you ask yourself, did the wicked nephew come here last night disguised in a fair wig and a Paris hat? Seemingly enjoying the situation, he surveyed us both. Ronald continued, I had a motive. Oh, yes. And I called to see my uncle yesterday morning. Why? To ask for money. And I went away without getting any. And that very same evening Lord Edgware dies. Good title that, by the way, Lord Edgware Dies. Look well on a bookstall. He paused. Still Poirot said nothing. Captain Hastings looks as though he's seen a ghost. Don't get so strung up, my dear fellow. Here comes the crux of the matter, the alibi. A remarkably good alibi. In plainer language, Mr., Mrs., and Miss Dortheimer, extremely rich and extremely musical. They have a box in Covent Garden. Into that box they invite young men with prospects. I am a young man with prospects. So, you see, when Uncle's lifeblood is flowing, I am whispering cheerful nothings into the dumb and encrusted ears of the fair, I beg her pardon, dark Rachel, in a box at Covent Garden. He leaned back in his chair. I hope I have not bored you. Any questions to ask? I can assure you that I have not been bored. Since you are so kind, there is one little question that I would like to ask. How long, Lord Edgware, have you known Miss Carlotta Adams? The young man sat up sharply, with an entirely new expression on his face. About a year. I like her very much. She's sympathetic, listens to a chap, and makes him feel he's something of a fellow. Poirot nodded. Then you would be sorry that she is dead. What? Ronald sprang up. Carlotta dead? What was it? An accident? No, she took an overdose of veronal. Oh, say, dash it. I'm more sorry than I can say. Yes, it is sad to die when you are young, when you do not want to die, when all life is open before you. I do not like to see youth deprived of its right to live, Lord Edgware. I feel very strongly about it. He rose. I wish you good day. As we walked to the front door, Miss Carroll came quickly to meet us. Monsieur Poirot, I'd like a word with you, if I may. About Geraldine. To tell the truth, Lord Edgware terrorized her. I sometimes thought he revenged himself on the mother, his first wife, that way. I shouldn't have mentioned it, if it hadn't been for Geraldine's very foolish outburst just now. Things she said, about hating her father, they might sound peculiar to anyone who didn't know. Poirot nodded. Tell me, mademoiselle, Lord Edgware never thought of marrying for a third time? How could he? His wife was alive, said Miss Carroll grimly. So, there was no one? Miss Carroll's colour rose. Of course there was no one, she said. The door of Jane's suite was opened by a neat, middle-aged woman with glasses. From the bedroom, Jane's voice called to her. Is that Monsieur Poirot, Alice? Make him sit right down. I'll find a rag to put on, and be there in a moment. Jane Wilkinson's idea of a rag was a gossamer negligee, which revealed more than it hid. She came in eagerly, saying, Well? Poirot rose and bowed over her hand. Madame, it is well. Lord Edgware is perfectly willing to agree to a divorce. What? Either the stupefaction on her face was genuine, or she was indeed a most marvellous actress. Monsieur Poirot, why, you're a genius. Madame, I cannot take compliments where they are not earned. 6 months ago, your husband wrote to you withdrawing his opposition. Wrote to me? I never got it. And to think, I've been going nearly crazy all these months. Lord Edgware seemed to be under the impression that you wish to marry an actor. Well, that's what I told him. She gave a pleased, child's smile. Suddenly it changed to alarm. Monsieur Poirot, you did not tell him about the Duke? No, I am discreet. That would not have done, huh? Well, he's got a mean nature, and marrying Merton he'd feel was a leg up for me, so he'd queer the pitch. But a film actor's different. Though, all the same, I'm surprised. Aren't you surprised, Alice? The maid had been tidying away outdoor garments. It seemed that she was completely in Jane's confidence. Yes, indeed, milady. His attitude, it puzzles you? Suggested Poirot to Jane. Oh, it does. But what does it matter? What made him change his mind so long as he has changed it? It may not interest you, but it interests me, madame. Jane paid no attention. The thing is that I'm free, she cried. The Duke is in Paris. I must cable him right away. My, won't his old mother be wild? And that is that, Poirot said as we left the suite. The single idea herself. She has no curiosity as to why that letter never reached her. But that letter, it intrigues me. There are 4 solutions of that problem, my friend. First, it was lost in the post. That does happen, but not very often. I am inclined to rule out that solution. Solution 2. Our beautiful lady is lying when she says she never received it. But I cannot see, Hastings, how it could be to her advantage. Solution 3. Lord Edgware is lying. But why invent a fictitious letter sent 6 months ago? No, I am inclined to think that he did send that letter, though what the motive was for his sudden change of attitude I cannot guess. So we come to the 4th solution, that someone suppressed that letter. Whoever suppressed it was someone who did not want the marriage dissolved. Hastings, I would give a great deal to know what is behind this affair. No sooner were we at home Then he flew to the telephone. He rang up the Savoy and asked to speak to Lady Edgware. "Oh, not a hope, old boy," I said with some amusement. "She's in a new play. She'll be at the theatre. It's only 10:30. The hotel clerk was evidently telling him exactly what I heard. "Ah, is that so? I should like then to speak to Lady Edgware's maid." In a few minutes the connection was made. "This is Monsieur Hercule Poirot. You remember me, do you not? Très bien. Now, something of importance has arisen. I would like you to come and see me at once. I will give you the address." He hung up the receiver with a thoughtful expression on his face. "Have you really got a piece of information?" "No, Hastings. It is she who will give me the information." Poirot gave me one of his supremely irritating smiles, and busied himself in tidying up. 10 minutes later the maid arrived. Poirot bustled forward. "Sit here, will you now, mademoiselle? Ellis, I think?" "Yes, sir, Ellis." "To begin with, Miss Ellis, you have been with Lady Edgware how long?" 3 years, sir." "Then you know her affairs well. I mean, you should have a good idea of who her enemies are likely to be." Ellis compressed her lips tightly. "Most women have tried to do her a spiteful turn, sir." "What about men?" Ellis gave a sour smile. "Oh, she can do what she likes with a gentleman, sir." Poirot smiled. "I believe I am not mistaken in saying that a little less than a year ago Mr. Brian Martin was very deeply in love with your mistress?" "Head over ears, sir. And it's is, not was, if you ask me." "He believed at that time she would marry him, eh?" "Yes, sir." "And then I suppose the Duke of Mutton appeared on the scene." "Yes, sir. Love at first sight it was with him. So Mr. Brian Martin was, how do you say, turned down? Did he take it badly?" "Carried on something awful, sir. Threatened her with a revolver once, and he was drinking a lot too. But in the end he calmed down. So it seemed, sir, but he still hung about, and I didn't like the look in his eye. I've warned her ladyship, but she only laughed. She's one who enjoys feeling her power, if you know what I mean." Poirot nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, I think I know what you mean." "You don't think she's in danger, sir?" "I think she is in great danger, but she has brought it on herself." His hand, running aimlessly along the mantel-shelf, caught a vase of roses, and it toppled over. The water fell on Ellis's face and head. He rushed for a towel, assisted the maid to dry her face and neck, and was profuse in apologies. Finally, a treasury note changed hands, and he escorted her towards the door, thanking her for her goodness in coming. "Mademoiselle, pardon me, but you are limping." "The corns?" murmured Poirot in the confidential voice of one sufferer to another. Corns it apparently was. Poirot expatiated upon a certain remedy which, according to him, worked wonders. Finally, Ellis departed. "Well, Poirot? Well?" He smiled at my eagerness. "Nothing more this evening, my friend. Tomorrow morning early we will ring up Japp and ask him to come round. We will also ring up Mr. Brian Martin. I think he will be able to tell us something interesting. Also, I wish to pay him a debt that I owe him." Poirot was smiling to himself. "What on earth are you fiddling with?" I said with some annoyance. Poirot held the object up. "With the pince-nez of the good Ellis, my friend. She left them behind." "Nonsense. She had them on her nose when she went out." He shook his head gently. "Wrong. What she had on, my dear Hastings, was the pair of pince-nez we found in Carlotta Adams' handbag." "Why did you ask Miss Carroll about the possibility of Lord Edgware's wanting to marry again?" I asked as we were driving home. "I have been searching for something to explain Lord Edgware's sudden volte-face regarding the matter of divorce. On the hypothesis that he did write that letter, there must have been a reason for so doing. The reason that presents itself most naturally is that he has suddenly met someone whom he desires to marry." Miss Carroll turned the idea down very decisively. "Yes, Miss Carroll. About Hastings, it is difficult to trust her evidence. To deceive deliberately, that is one thing. But to be so sure of your facts that the details do not matter, that, my friend, is a characteristic of particularly honest persons. Already she has told us one lie. She said she saw Jane Wilkinson's face when she could not possibly have done so. When this is pointed out to her, poof, what does it matter? If she saw her face or not, it was Jane Wilkinson, and so with any other question. The positive witness should always be treated with suspicion, my friend. The uncertain witness, who will think eminent, is infinitely more to be depended upon. Now I think, Hastings, that it is time we dined, and after that, about 9 o'clock, I have one more visit I wish to make. Where? To the house of Sir Montague Corner at Chiswick. I would like to know a little more about that telephone call. It was about 10 o'clock when we reached Sir Montague Corner's house at Chiswick. The butler led the way up to a long room on the first floor overlooking the river. Monsieur Hercule Poirot, he announced. It was a beautifully proportioned room and had an old-world air, with its carefully shaded dim lamps. A bridge table was set near the open window, and round it sat 4 people. As we entered, one of the 4 rose. "It is a great pleasure to make your acquaintance, Monsieur Poirot." I looked with some interest at Sir Montague Corner. He was a short man with small, intelligent black eyes, and a carefully arranged toupee. His manner was affected to the last degree. "Let me introduce you, Mr. and Mrs. Whitburn." "We've met before," said Mrs. Whitburn brightly. "And Mr. Ross." Ross, it seemed, was an actor, a young fellow of about 22, with a pleasant face and fair hair. Poirot accepted an offer of old brandy. As we sipped it, Sir Montague spoke of Japanese prints, of the French Impressionists, of modern music, and of the theories of Einstein. All around the room were exquisite examples of art and culture. To speak of crime in such an atmosphere is unpardonable, Poirot began apologetically. "Not at all." Sir Montague waved a gracious hand. "An inspector has been here today, a curious person. He had never heard of Benvenuto Cellini. He came about Jane Wilkinson." "It was fortunate for the lady that she was at your house last night." "So it seems," said Sir Montague. "Jane's got luck," said Mrs. Whitburn. "She's been dying to get rid of Edgware, and here's somebody gone and saved her the trouble." "I was favourably impressed by her," Sir Montague continued graciously. "She made several most intelligent remarks about Greek art." I smiled to myself, picturing Jane saying, "Yes, and now, really, how wonderful," in her magical husky voice. "And now," said Poirot, "let me come to the object of my visit. Lady Edgware was called to the telephone when she was here. Perhaps you will allow me to question your domestics on this subject?" "Certainly." The butler answered the bell, and Sir Montague explained what was wanted. "Who answered the telephone when it rang?" began Poirot. "I answered it myself, sir." "Did the person calling ask to speak to Lady Edgware or to Miss Jane Wilkinson?" "To Lady Edgware, sir." "What did they say exactly?" "As far as I remember, sir, I said hello. A voice asked if that was Chiswick 43434, and on my replying yes, it said, 'Is Lady Edgware dining there?' I said her ladyship was dining here. The voice said, 'I would like to speak to her, please.' I went and informed her ladyship and showed her where the phone was. Her ladyship said, 'Hello, who's speaking?' Then she said, 'Yes, that's all right, Lady Edgware speaking.' She said to me that someone had laughed and hung up the receiver. She asked me if the person ringing up had given any name. They had not done so. That was all, sir." Poirot frowned. "Was it a man or a woman who rang?" "A lady, I think so. It sounded like a foreign voice. The R's were very noticeable." The following day was the 30th of June. It was just 9:30 when we were told that Inspector Japp was below and anxious to see us. Ah, ce bon Japp. What does he want, I wonder? Help, I snapped. He's out of his depth over some case and he's come to you. I had not the indulgence for Japp that Poirot had. It was not so much that I minded his picking Poirot's brains. After all, Poirot enjoyed the process. What annoyed me was Japp's hypocritical pretense that he was doing nothing of the kind. Japp greeted us both heartily. Just going to have breakfast, I see? Not got the hens to lay square eggs for you yet, Monsieur Poirot? This was an allusion to a complaint from Poirot as to the varying sizes of eggs, which had offended his sense of symmetry. As yet, no, said Poirot, smiling. And what brings you to see us so early, my good Japp? It's not early. I've been up and at work for a good 2 hours. As to what brings me to see you, well, it's murder. Lord Edgware was killed last night, stabbed in the neck by his wife. She drove up in a taxi. A taxi? I echoed involuntarily, her words at the Savoy coming back to me. Japp continued, Rang the bell, asked for Lord Edgware. It was 10 o'clock. Butler said he'd see. Oh, she says, you needn't. I'm Lady Edgware. I suppose he's in the library. And with that she walks along and goes in. Well, 10 minutes later, the butler heard the front door shut. He locked up for the night about 11. The library was dark, so he thought his master had gone to bed. This morning the body was discovered by a housemaid, stabbed in the back of the neck just at the roots of the hair. Straight through the cistern into the medulla, that's what the doctor said. If you hit on exactly the right spot, it kills a man instantaneously. That almost implies medical knowledge. Japp shrugged. 10 to 1, she just struck lucky. Not so lucky if it results in her being hanged, mon ami, observed Poirot. No. Of course, she was a fool sailing in like that and giving her name and all. Possibly she didn't intend mischief. They quarrelled, and she whipped out a penknife and jabbed him one. Or was it a penknife? Poirot asked. Well, something of that kind, the doctor says. Whatever it was, she took it away with her. Poirot shook his head. No, my friend. I know the lady. She would be quite incapable of such a hot-blooded, impulsive action. Besides, she would be most unlikely to have a penknife with her. Few women have, and assuredly not Jane Wilkinson. But what has brought you to me, huh? You have here a nice, straightforward murder. You have the criminal, you have the motive. What exactly is the motive, by the way? Wanted to marry another man. Also heard to make threats. Said she meant to go round in a taxi and bump him off. You are very well informed. Someone has been very obliging. We get to hear things, Monsieur Poirot? Poirot nodded. He had reached out for the daily paper. In a mechanical manner he folded and smoothed it, his mind deep in some kind of puzzle. Since all goes in the swimming fashion, why come to me? Because I heard you were at Regent Gate yesterday morning. Now, as soon as I heard that, I said to myself, something here. His lordship sent for Monsieur Poirot. Why? What did he suspect? What did he fear? Before doing anything definite, I'd better go round and have a word with him. What do you mean by anything definite? Arresting the lady, I suppose. Exactly. You have not seen her yet? Oh, yes. Went round to the Savoy first thing. Wasn't going to risk her giving us the slip. So you... He stopped. His eyes, which had been fixed unseeingly on the paper in front of him, now took on a different expression. And what did she say? Took hysterics, rolled herself about, threw up her arms, and finally flopped down on the ground. Oh, a pretty bit of acting. I'll swear she was enjoying it. Yes, said Poirot thoughtfully. I should say that was perfectly possible. What next? That sour-faced maid of hers doped her with smelling salts, and at last she recovered enough to ask for her solicitor. Hysterics one moment, solicitors the next. Now I ask you, is that natural behaviour? In this case, quite natural, I should say. First, She gives you her conception of how the part of a wife suddenly learning of her husband's death should be played. Then, having satisfied her histrionic instinct, her native shrewdness makes her send for a solicitor. I left 2 of my men there and came along to you. There's got to be a big splash about this. All the papers will be full of it, and you know what papers are. Talking of papers, how do you account for this, my dear friend? He leant across the table, his finger on a paragraph in the Society News. Japp read the item aloud. Sir Montague Corner gave a very successful dinner party last night at his house on the river at Chiswick. Among those present were Sir George and Lady Dufis, Mr. James Blunt, the well-known dramatic critic, Sir Oscar Hammerfelt of the Overton Film Studios, Miss Jane Wilkinson, Lady Edgware, and others. Japp looked taken aback. Then he rallied. This thing was sent to the press beforehand, you'll see. You'll find that Our Lady wasn't there, or that she came in late, 11 o'clock or so. Now, Monsieur Poirot, close as an oyster, I know you to be, but, you'll tell me why Lord Edgware sent for you? Poirot shook his head. Lord Edgware did not send for me. It was I who requested him to give me an appointment. Really? And for what reason? Poirot hesitated. I will answer your question, but I should like to answer it in my own way. I will request, went on Poirot, that you permit me to ring up a certain person, and ask him to come here. What person? Monsieur Brian Martin. The film star? What's he got to do with it? I think that you may find what he has got to say interesting and possibly helpful. We have his card. Hastings, will you be so good? Tell him that Lord Edgware has been murdered, and that I should esteem it a favour if he would come round and see me immediately. I repeated this meticulously. There was a startled exclamation at the other end. My God, said Martin. So she's done it then. I'll come at once. What did he say? Asked Poirot. I told him. Ah, said Poirot. He seemed pleased. So she's done it then. That was what he said, eh? Then it is as I thought. It is as I thought. It fell to me to ring up Inspector Japp and Brown Martin the following morning. Somewhat to my surprise, Poirot rang up Jenny Driver, and asked her also to be present. Brown Martin was the first to arrive. He looked a shade uneasy. Jenny Driver arrived almost immediately afterwards. She seemed surprised to see Brown, and he seemed to share her surprise. A moment later, Japp entered the room. "Well, Monsieur Poirot, what's it all about?" Brown Martin asked. "You've got some wonderful theory or other, I suppose?" Poirot beamed at him. "No, nothing wonderful, just a little story, so simple that I am ashamed not to have seen it at once. Listen to me, and you shall know everything. See, I am going to be humble. Not likely, I thought, unbelievingly. I am going to show you how I was hoodwinked, how it needed the chance remark by a total stranger to put me on the right track. I will begin at the supper party at the Savoy. Lady Edgware accosted me and asked for a private interview. She wanted to get rid of her husband. She said that she might have to go around in a taxi and kill him herself. Those words were heard by Mr. Brian Martin, who called on the following morning for the express purpose of driving those words home. "Not at all," cried Brian Martin angrily. "I came—" Poirot held up his hand. "You came ostensibly to tell me a tale that a child might have seen through. A girl whose consent you had to obtain, a man whom you recognized by a gold tooth, mon ami. No young man would have a gold tooth. The gold tooth is a hopelessly old-fashioned piece of dentistry. Having told your cock-and-bull story, you get down to the real purpose of your visit. To poison my mind against Lady Edgware. To prepare the ground for the moment when she murders her husband." Brown Martin's face was deathly pale. "You know I have agreed to see him, for she has told you so. But when I go to see him that morning, he agrees to a divorce. Any motive for a crime on Lady Edgware's part is gone. Moreover, he tells me that he has already written to Lady Edgware to that effect. But Lady Edgware declares that she never got that letter. Either she lies, her husband lies, or somebody has suppressed it. Who? Now I ask myself, why does Monsieur Brian Martin give himself the trouble to come and tell me all these lies? Lord Edgware says that his wife told him she wanted to marry an actor. Well, supposing that is so. But the lady changes her mind. By the time Lord Edgware's letter agreeing to the divorce arrives, it is someone else she wants to marry, not you. There would be a reason, then, for you suppressing that letter. What, then, would be your frame of mind? As I see it, fury, a desire to do Lady Edgware as much harm as possible. And what greater harm could you do her than to have her accused, perhaps hanged, for murder? Good Lord, said Japp. But yes, Carlotta Adams had two principal men friends, Captain Marsh and Brian Martin. It was possible, then, that Brian Martin was the one who suggested the hoax and offered her $10,000 to carry it through. It has always seemed to me unlikely that Miss Adams could ever have believed Ronald Marsh would have $10,000 to give her. "I didn't, I tell you," came hoarsely from the film actor's lips. When the substance of Miss Adams' letter to her sister was wired from Washington, it seemed that my reasoning was wrong. But later I discovered that a sheet of the letter was missing. So he might refer to someone who was not Captain Marsh. There was one more piece of evidence. When he was arrested, Captain Marsh stated that he thought he saw Brian Martin enter the house. Coming from an accused man, that carried no weight. Also, Monsieur Martin had an alibi. That alibi was vouched for by one person only, Miss Driver. "What about it?" said the girl sharply. "Nothing, mademoiselle. Except that your friend Miss Adams was specially interested in Brian Martin. You may have been unaware of it, monsieur, but it explains, as nothing else could, her feeling of dislike towards Lady Edgware." He looked at Brian Martin. "That dislike was on your behalf. You had told Miss Adams all about your rebuff, had you not?" Brian hesitated. "Well, yeah, I felt I must talk to someone, and she was sympathetic. Eh bien, what happens next?" "Ronald Marsh, he is arrested. Immediately your spirits improve. Although your plan has miscarried, owing to Lady Edgware's change of mind about going to a party, yet somebody else has become the scapegoat. And then, at the luncheon party, you hear Donald Ross say something to Hastings that seems to show that you are not so safe after all." "It isn't true." The actor's eyes looked wild with horror. "I tell you, I heard nothing. I did nothing." Then came the greatest shock of the morning. "That is quite true, and I hope you have now been sufficiently punished for coming to me, Hercule Poirot, with a cock and bull story." We all gasped. Poirot continued dreamily. "There were 5 questions I asked myself. Who had suppressed that letter? Brian Martin answered that question very well. What had induced Lord Edgware suddenly to change his mind and agree to a divorce? Well, Lord Edgware was a man of peculiar tastes. It was possible that facts about him had come to light, which might be used by his wife as a lever, coupled with the threat of publicity. Lord Edgware gave in, though his fury at having to do so was expressed in the murderous look on his face when he thought himself unobserved. It also explains the suspicious quickness with which he said, "Not because of anything in the letter." 2 questions remained, and I was forced to the conclusion that either I was wrong about Mr. Martin, or wrong about the questions. In despair, I once again read that letter of Miss Adams, and I found something. See for yourselves, you see, the sheet is torn, unevenly as often happens. Supposing now that before the H at the top there was an S. You see, not he, but she. It was a woman who suggested this hoax to Carlotta Adams. Poirot beamed around. Sir Montague persuaded us to remain and play bridge. I excused myself. The stakes were bigger than I cared about, and young Ross seemed relieved at someone taking his hand. The evening ended in a heavy financial gain to Poirot and Sir Montague. Then we took our departure. Ross came with us. The night was fine, and we decided to walk until we picked up a taxi. Poirot asked casually, "You knew Carlotta Adams, Mr. Ross?" Ross shook his head. "No, I saw her death announced in the paper tonight. Overdose of some drug or other." "Did you see her show?" I asked. "No, that sort of thing's not much in my line." "Ah," said Poirot. "Here is a taxi." "Think I'll walk? I get a tube straight home from Hammersmith." Suddenly he gave a nervous laugh. "Odd thing, that dinner last night. We were 13. Some fellow failed at the last minute. We never noticed, till just the end of dinner." When we got home, we found Japp waiting for us. "Dear, my good friend, how goes it?" "Well, it doesn't go any too well, and that's a fact. Got any help for me, Monsieur Poirot? There's some good stuff in that funny-shaped head of yours." Poirot acknowledged the compliment somewhat coldly. He related the steps we had taken, and the conclusion we had drawn. That Carlotta Adams had been persuaded for a considerable fee to impersonate Jane Wilkinson and visit Lord Edgware, and that she had subsequently been murdered. "By the Lord!" exclaimed Japp. "Not that I think there's anything to show Carlotta Adams was put out of the way. I should put it one of two ways. She went to Lord Edgware's house for some reason we may never discover, and they had a bit of a dispute. He turned nasty, she turned nasty, and she finished him off. She hadn't meant murder, and when she got home, she went all to pieces and took an overdose as the easiest way out. The other explanation is that the hoax and the murder had nothing to do with each other. It's just a damn strange coincidence." Poirot merely said non-committally, "Mais oui, c'est possible." He told Japp of Lord Edgware's letter to America. "I'll get on to that at once. I'm the more in favour of the lady being the killer because, I can't find anyone else. No, Captain Marsh, his lordship, as now is, well, he's got a motive sticking out a yard, bad record, too, but he's got an alibi. He was at the opera with the Dortheimers, and Mademoiselle. The daughter, well, she dined with some people called Carthew West. They took her to the opera and saw her home afterwards. 11:45 she got in. That disposes of her. The secretary woman seems all right," Japp grunted. "Then there's the butler. I can't say I take to him much. It isn't natural for a man to have good looks like that. Oh, yes, I'm checking up on him all right." "No fresh facts have come to light?" "One or two. For one thing, Lord Edgware's key is missing, and he cashed a cheque yesterday, £100 in French notes. That money has disappeared. Miss Carroll mentioned it to me, and then I found that it had gone." Poirot looked thoughtful. "That is a complication, or a simplification. Oh, by the way, the wound. The doctor says it wasn't made by an ordinary penknife, something of that kind, but a different-shaped blade." "Yes, I think the Adams Guild did it," said Japp, rising. "A fine bit of work on your part, Monsieur Poirot, to tumble to that. But there, of course, you go about to theatres and amusing yourself. Things strike you that don't get the chance of striking me. Pity there's no apparent motive, but a little spadework will soon bring it to light." In less than 10 minutes, Brown Martin had joined us. "Good heavens, Monsieur Poirot, this is a terrible business. I'm shocked to the core, and yet I've always have suspected that something of this kind might happen. You may remember I was saying so yesterday. Mais oui, I remember perfectly. Let me introduce you to Inspector Japp, who is in charge of the case. Brown Martin sat down, his lips pressed tightly together. I don't see, he objected, why you asked me to come round. Dash it all, Jane's a friend of mine. And yet, the moment that you hear Lord Edgware is murdered, you jump to the conclusion that it is she who has murdered him, remarked Poirot dryly. In a matter of this kind, friendship must not be allowed. You cannot refuse to tell us what you know. You have a duty to society, young man. Brown Martin sighed. I suppose you're right. What do you want me to tell you? Have you ever heard Lady Edgware utter threats against her husband? Asked Japp. Well, yeah, several times. Once she said she'd take a taxi and go round and kill him. What, you heard that, Monsieur Poirot? He appealed to my friend. Poirot nodded. Japp continued. Now, Mr. Martin, we've been informed that she wanted her freedom in order to marry another man. Do you know who that man was? Brown nodded. The Duke of Merton. The Duke of Merton? The detective whistled. Flying at high game, eh? He's one of the richest men in England. Brown nodded dejectedly. Poirot was lying back in his chair, his fingers pressed together. Wouldn't her husband divorce her? Brown shook his head. No, he refused absolutely. And now I come in, my good Japp. I was asked by Lady Edgware to see her husband and try and get him to agree to a divorce. I had an appointment for this morning. Brown Martin pursed his lips. Edgware would never have agreed. Jane knew that in her heart of hearts. Poirot smiled. His eyes grew suddenly very green. You are wrong, my dear young man. I saw Lord Edgware yesterday, and he agreed to a divorce. Brown Martin stared at Poirot, dumbfounded. He should have told Jane at once. I did, Monsieur Martin. Poirot smiled. It impairs the motive a little, does it not? And now, Monsieur Martin, let me call your attention to this. He showed him the newspaper paragraph. Brown read it. You mean this makes an alibi? Well, I'm afraid it's no good, he said regretfully. Jane didn't go to that dinner. How do you know? Somebody told me. A pity, said Poirot thoughtfully. Japp looked at him curiously. I can't make you out, monsieur. Seems now as though you don't want the young woman to be guilty. My good Japp, here is a young woman who wishes, you say, to get rid of her husband. That point I do not dispute. She told me so frankly. She repeats several times before witnesses that she is thinking of killing him. She then goes out one evening, calls at his house, has herself announced, stabs him, and goes away. Pugh! My good friend, has it even the common sense? Well, said Japp, rising, it's to the advantage of the police when criminals lose their heads. I must get back to Savoy now. You permit that I accompany you? Japp made no demur, and we set out. Brown Martin seemed to be in a great state of nervous excitement. He begged earnestly that any further development might be reported to him. Nervy sort of chap, Japp commented. Poirot agreed. I made a list of all the women who had been even remotely connected with the case. Besides Jane Wilkinson, there were 3. The Geraldine Marsh, Miss Carroll, and Miss Thriver. Of those 3, the one that interested me most was Miss Carroll. She had worked with Lord Edgware for some years, and some motive might exist, of which we were totally unaware. I also felt that I could not quite dismiss Geraldine Marsh from the case. She hated her father, she had told me so. Suppose, when she went into the house that night, she had deliberately stabbed her father, and then coolly proceeded upstairs to fetch the pearls. The gold box found in Miss Adams' bag had the initial D in it. I had heard Geraldine addressed by her cousin as Dinah. Also, she was in Paris last November, and might possibly have met Carlotta Adams there. Then there was Miss Jenny Driver. He paused, looking at Jenny. She looked back at him, an impudent head on one side. "And what have you got on me?" "Nothing, mademoiselle, except that you were a friend of Brian Martin's. Your surname begins with D, and you have the brains and the nerve to commit such a crime. I doubt if anyone else had." The girl lit a cigarette. "Continue," she said cheerfully. "Bien. So, was Monsieur Martin's alibi genuine, or was it not? If it was, who was it Ronald Marsh had seen go into the house?" And suddenly I remembered something. The good-looking butler at Regent Gate bore a very marked resemblance to Monsieur Martin. It was he whom Captain Marsh had seen. It is my idea that he discovered his master killed. Beside his master was an envelope containing French banknotes to the value of £100. He took these notes, slipped out of the house, left them in safe-keeping with some friend, and returned, letting himself in with Lord Edgware's key. He let the crime be discovered by the housemaid on the following morning. He felt in no danger himself, as he was convinced that Lady Edgware had done the murder. However, when Lady Edgware had an alibi, and Scotland Yard began investigating his antecedents, he decamped. Japp nodded approvingly. Poirot continued. "I still have the question of the pince-nez to settle. They were apparently nothing to do with Miss Carroll. I was walking home with Hastings, wondering who I could ask for details about Monsieur Martin's feeling for Jane Wilkinson, trying to arrange things in my mind with order and method, and then the miracle happened. A passer-by uttered a simple sentence. He said to his companion that somebody should have asked Alice, and immediately the whole thing came to me in a flash." Poirot nodded. Yes, the pince-nez, the telephone call at the dinner party, the short woman who called for the gold box in Paris. Alice, of course, Jane Wilkinson's maid." He looked round at us. "Come, my friends, let me tell you the real story of what happened that night." The following day, Japp came round to see us about tea-time, red and wrathful. "I've made a bloomer. I've let that," here he gave way to profanity, "of a butler slip through my fingers. He's hooked it. Seems he's mixed up with a couple of disreputable nightclubs. In fact, he's a real bad hat." "Tout de même, that does not necessarily mean that he is a murderer." "No," Japp agreed. "I'm more than ever convinced it was the Adams girl. I've got nothing to prove it as yet, though. She kept no letters, except a few from her sister in Washington. 1 or 2 pieces of good old-fashioned jewelry, nothing new or expensive. She didn't keep a diary. Dash it all, the girl doesn't seem to have had any private life at all." "Well, I'm looking now for the connection between her and the late Lord Edgware. I think I'll have to go over to Paris. There was Paris written in that little gold box, and he ran over to Paris several times last autumn, so Miss Carroll tells me. Inquest tomorrow. It'll be adjourned, of course. After that, I'll take the afternoon boat." "You have a furious energy, Japp. It amazes me." The maid opened the door. "Mr. Brian Martin, sir. Will you see him?" "I'm off, Monsieur Poirot." Japp hoisted himself up. "All the stars of the theatrical world seem to consult you. You must be a millionaire by now. What do you do with the money? Save it?" "Assuredly I practice the thrift. And, talking of the disposal of money, how did Lord Edgware dispose of his?" "Such property as wasn't entailed he left to his daughter. 500 to Miss Carroll, no other bequests. Very simple will." With a cheerful "So long," Japp departed, and Brian Martin entered. I thought that he looked haggard, and not too happy. "I am afraid I have been guilty of taking up your time for nothing, Monsieur Poirot," he said apologetically. "I have seen the lady in question, but she won't hear of my interesting you in the matter. I'm very sorry to have bothered you." Du tout," said Poirot genially. "I expected this. When you spoke of consulting your friend, I could have predicted that all would have arrived as it has done. I formed my theory as soon as you mentioned a gold tooth." Brown Martin stared at him. "Come," Poirot said kindly, "let us talk of something else." Brown said, "That Scotland Yard man, Inspector Japp, he came round and asked me some questions about Carlotta Adams. You knew her well, Miss Adams?" "Well, not very. I knew her as a child in America. I came across her here once or twice, but I never saw very much of her." "You liked her?" Brown nodded. "Yeah, but I knew nothing that could help the inspector. Carlotta was always very reserved about herself." There was a pause. Then Poirot said with a smile, "The affair of Lord Edgware's death becomes intriguing, does it not? The butler has disappeared. You comprehend? Flight is as good as a confession." "The butler!" Brown exclaimed. "A singularly good-looking man. Il vous ressemble un peu." Poirot bowed in a complimentary fashion. "Of course, I realize now why the butler's face has struck me as being fatally familiar." "You flatter me," said Brown Martin with a laugh. "Well, Monsieur Poirot, let me apologize again for having troubled you." He shook hands with us both. The haggard look was more apparent. As soon as the door closed behind him, I burst out, "Poirot, did you really expect him to come back and relinquish all idea of investigating those strange things that happened to him in America?" "You heard me say so, Hastings. But then you must know who this mysterious girl is that he had to consult." Poirot smiled. "My friend, I know the truth of the whole affair, and so could you know it if you would only use the brains the good God has given you. Sometimes I really am tempted to believe that by inadvertence he passed you by." At the Savoy, we found a legal-looking gentleman who had just arrived, and we proceeded together to Jane's suite. The widowed Lady Edgware was trying on hats, dressed in a filmy creation of black and white. She greeted us with a dazzling smile. "Why, Monsieur Poirot, how good of you to come along. Mr. Moxon," this was to the solicitor, "I'm so glad you've come. This man here seems to think that I went out and killed George this morning." "Last night, madam," said Japp. "You said this morning, 10 o'clock. "I said 10 p.m., the inspector said severely. "Well, then that's all right. I was at a party. Perhaps I oughtn't to have said that." Her eyes sought the solicitor's. "If at 10 o'clock last night you were at a party, Lady Edgware, I can see no objection to your informing the inspector of the fact." "That's right. Now, about this party, Lady Edgware, you left here when?" "About 8 o'clock. I dropped in at the Piccadilly Palace to say good-bye to a friend who was leaving for the States, Mrs. Van Duzen. I got to Chiswick at 9:15. "What time did you leave?" "About 11:30. "And whilst you were at the dinner, you didn't leave it?" "Well, I was called to the telephone. I guess it was some kind of hoax. A voice said, 'Is that Lady Edgware?' And I said, 'Yeah, that's right,' and then they just laughed and rang off." "How long were you away from the dinner table?" "About a minute and a half." Japp collapsed. Having heard her story, he could do no more, until he had disproved it. Thanking her coldly, he withdrew. Jane looked at us. "That inspector just scared me to death. Seems it's kind of lucky I changed my mind and went to that party after all." "Oh, what is that you say, madame?" Poirot demanded. "Do you mean that at some point you were not going to go and then changed your mind?" "Yeah. I had a frightful headache yesterday afternoon." Poirot swallowed. "Did you tell anyone?" She nodded. "There was quite a crowd of us having tea, and I said my head was aching fit to split, and that I was going right home, and that I was going to cut the dinner." "And what made you change your mind, madame?" "Alice said I couldn't afford to turn it down. Old Sir Montague pulls a lot of strings. Oh, once I marry Merton, I'm through with all this. But Ellis said there's many a slip, etc., and off I went. You owe Ellis a debt of gratitude, madame. All the same, this gives one furiously to think. Jane picked up the hat she had been trying on. I hate black, she said disconsolately. I never wear it. But I suppose as a correct widow I've just got to. All those hats are too frightful. Ring up the other hat place, Ellis. I've got to be fit to be seen. Poirot and I slipped quietly from the room. Japp reappeared about an hour later, and said he was eternally blasted. You have made the inquiries? Asked Poirot sympathetically. Japp nodded gloomily. And unless 13 people are lying, she didn't do it. The people there last night were none of them close friends of hers, and some of them didn't know each other. Their testimony is independent and reliable. That she did leave the dinner table to answer a telephone call, but the butler was with her, and he heard what she said. He frowned. It's curious that, you know. Not that it's got anything to do with it. Or was it a man or a woman who ran up? A woman. Curious, said Poirot thoughtfully. Well, never mind that, said Japp impatiently. The evening went as she said, and the people at the Savoy saw her come in. But what about those two in Regent's Gate? It isn't only the butler. Lord Edgware's secretary saw her too. They swear that it was Lady Edgware who came there at 10 o'clock. How long has the butler been there? 6 months, eh bien, my friend. He cannot have recognized Lady Edgware, since he had not seen her before. Well, he knew her from her pictures in the papers, and the secretary's been with Lord Edgware 5 or 6 years, and she's absolutely positive. Ah, I should like to see this secretary. Well, why not come along with me now? Who comes into the title? I asked as I picked up my hat. A nephew, Captain Ronald Marsh, bit of a waster. But what does the doctor say as to the time of death? We'll have to wait for the autopsy to be exact, but 10 o'clock fits in well enough. Carlotta Adams leaves her flat at 7 o'clock and goes to the Piccadilly Palace. Earlier in the day she has taken a room there as Mrs. Van Dusen. She wears a pair of strong glasses which alters her appearance. At 8:30, Lady Edgware is shown to her room. There they change clothes. Dressed in a fair wig, a white taffeta dress and ermine wrap, Carlotta Adams leaves the hotel and drives to Chiswick. Yes, it is perfectly possible. I have been to the house in the evening. The dinner table is lit only with candles. The lamps are dim. No one there knows Jane Wilkinson very well. Oh, it was quite easy. And if someone had spotted the fake, well, that was all arranged for too. Lady Edgware, wearing a dark wig, Carlotta's clothes and a pince-nez, pays her bill, has her suitcase put on a taxi, and drives to Euston. She removes the dark wig in the lavatory, and puts the suitcase in the cloakroom. Before going to Regent Gate, she rings up Chiswick and asks to speak to Lady Edgware. This has been arranged between them. If all has gone well, Carlotta is to answer simply, "That's right." I need hardly say Miss Adams was ignorant of the real reason for the telephone call. Having heard the words, Lady Edgware goes to Regent Gate and commits the first murder. She did not know that Miss Carroll was watching her from above. As far as she is aware, it will be the butler's word against the word of 12 well-known and distinguished people. She leaves the house, returns to Euston, changes from fair to dark again, and picks up her suitcase. She has now to put in time till Carlotta Adams returns from Chiswick. She goes to the corner house, occasionally glancing at her watch, for the time passes slowly. She puts the small gold box she has ordered from Paris in Carlotta Adams' bag, which of course she is carrying. Perhaps it is then she finds the letter. As soon as she sees the address, she scents danger. She opens it. Her suspicions are justified. perhaps her first impulse is to destroy the letter. But she sees a better way. By removing one page, it reads like an accusation of Ronald Marsh, a man who had a powerful motive for the crime. Even if Ronald has an alibi, it will still read as an accusation of a man, so long as she tears off the S of she. So, that is what she does. Then replaces it in the envelope and puts the envelope back in the bag. Then, the time having come, she walks towards the Savoy Hotel. As soon as she sees the car pass with herself inside, she quickens her pace, enters at the same time, and goes straight up the stairs. She is inconspicuously dressed in black. It is unlikely that anyone will notice her. Upstairs, she goes to her room. Carlotta Adams has just reached it. The maid has been told to go to bed, a perfectly usual proceeding. They again change clothes, and then Lady Edgware suggests a drink, to celebrate. In that drink is the veronal. She congratulates her victim, says she will send her the check tomorrow. Carlotta Adams goes home. She is very sleepy. She tries to ring up a friend, but gives it up. She is too tired. The veronal is beginning to work. She goes to bed, and she never awakes again. Now for the third crime. At a luncheon party there is a mention of the judgment of Paris, and Lady Edgware takes Paris to be the only Paris she knows, the Paris of fashion and frills. But opposite her is a young man who was at the dinner at Chiswick, a young man who heard the Lady Edgware of that night discussing Homer and Greek civilization generally. He cannot understand. He stares. And suddenly it comes to him, this is not the same woman. He must have advice. He thinks of me. He speaks to Hastings. But the lady overhears him. She is shrewd enough to realize that she has somehow given herself away. She hears Hastings say that I will not be in till 5. At 20 to 5, she goes to Ross's maisonette. He opens the door, and it does not occur to him to be afraid. He goes with her into the dining room. She pours out some story to him. Perhaps she goes on her knees and flings her arms around his neck. And then, swift and sure, she strikes as before. He, too, is silenced. Japp spoke hoarsely. "You mean she did it all the time?" Poirot bowed his head. "But why, if Lord Edgware was willing to give her a divorce?" "Because the Duke of Merton is a pillar of the Anglo-Catholics. He would not dream of marrying a woman whose husband was alive. As a widow, she was pretty certain to be able to marry him." "Then why send you to Lord Edgware?" "Ah, parbleu, to pull the cotton wool over my eyes, to make me a witness to the fact that there was no motive for the murder. Yes, she dared to make me. Hercule Poirot, her cat's paw. Ma foi, she succeeded too." I do not propose to describe either the inquest on Lord Edgware or that on Carlotta Adams. In Carlotta's case, the verdict was death by misadventure. In the case of Lord Edgware, the inquest was adjourned. None of the facts concerning Carlotta's impersonation of Jane Wilkinson were allowed to leak out. A description of the wanted butler was published. Japp had drawn a blank in Paris, but a couple of days later he came in looking pleased with himself. "I've discovered that a fair-haired lady deposited an attaché case in the cloakroom at Euston at 9 o'clock the night of the murder. They've been shown Miss Adams' case and identify it positively." "Ah." "She went there, doubtless, made herself up in the lavatory, and then left the case." "When was it taken out again?" "At 10:30. The clerk says by the same lady." Poirot nodded. "And I've reason to believe that Carlotta Adams was in Lyon's Corner House in the Strand at 11 o'clock, Japp continued. There's been a mention in the papers of the little gold box with the ruby initials, and a wonder expressed as to where she passed her last evening. Well, a waitress at the corner house read this, and remembered that a lady she had served had had such a box in her hand, and there's going to be an article in tonight's Evening Shriek. How has it come to your ears so quickly? We're on very good terms with the Evening Shriek. It got passed on to me, so I rushed along to the corner house straight away. Yes, I thought. That was the way things ought to be done. Here was Japp getting all this news at first hand, quite possibly missing valuable details, and here was Poirot placidly content with stale news. Japp continued, I saw the girl. She couldn't pick out Carlotta Adams' photograph, but she said the lady was young and dark and slim. Dressed in black, so the girl said, and she had an attaché case with her. She kept looking at her watch. It was when the girl brought the bill that she noticed the box. The lady had it on the table, and was smiling in a pleased sort of way. Apparently, Miss Adams sat there some time after paying her bill. Then finally she looked at her watch again, seemed to give it up, and went out. Poirot was frowning. It was a rendezvous with someone who did not turn up. Did Carlotta Adams meet that person afterwards, or did she go home and try to ring him up? I wish I knew. Oh, how I wish I knew. Well, that's your theory, Monsieur Poirot. Mysterious man in the background. That man in the background's a myth. You're a pig-headed old boy, you know. Japp got up. You insult my head. Figure of speech, that's all, Japp said soothingly. No offence meant. Any orders? Poirot smiled forgivingly at him. An order, no. A suggestion, yes. Circularize the taxicabs. Find one that took a fare, or more probably 2 fares, from Covent Garden to Regent Gate on the night of the murder, probably about 20 minutes to 11. No sooner had Japp left than Poirot arose with great energy. Mon ami, if you will pardon me saying so, your tie does not please me. Change it, I beseech you, and also brush the right sleeve. Are we proposing to call on King George? I inquired sarcastically. No. But I saw in the newspaper this morning that the Duke of Merton had returned to Merton House. I wish to do him all honour. There is nothing of the socialist about Poirot. Why are we going to call on the Duke of Merton? I wish to see him. That was all I could get out of him. The Duke was about 27 years of age. He was thin and weakly, with nondescript thin hair going bald at the temples, a small bitter mouth, and vague eyes. He was sitting at a writing-table, an unfinished letter before him. For what reason do you wish to see me? He inquired coldly. Poirot sat down opposite him. I am at present engaged on investigating the circumstances connected with Lord Edgware's death. You are, I think, acquainted with his wife, with Miss Jane Wilkinson? Very so. I should like to ask you outright, Your Grace, are you shortly going to marry Miss Jane Wilkinson? When I am engaged to marry anyone, the fact will be announced in the newspapers. I consider your question an impertinence. The Duke stood up. Good morning. Well, that didn't go too well, I said sympathetically outside. He certainly sent you away with a flea in the ear. He gave me the reply he would give to a reporter, yes. Poirot chuckled. But I know exactly how the case stands. You saw he was writing a letter. Eh bien, in my early days, I learned that it was very useful to read handwriting upside down. Shall I tell you what he was saying in that letter? My dearest Jane, my adored, my beautiful angel, how can I tell you what you are to me? You who have suffered so much, your beautiful nature. Poirot, I cried, scandalized. You can't even look a private letter. It's not playing the game. I do not play games. Murder is not a game. It is serious. At Regent Gate, Japp questioned the butler first. Now then, Alton, it was 10 o'clock when this lady came? Her ladyship, yes, sir. How did you recognize her? Asked Poirot. She told me her name, sir, and I've seen her in the papers. Poirot nodded. How was she dressed? Black walking dress, and a small black hat, string of pearls, and grey gloves. Poirot looked a question at Japp. White taffeta evening dress and ermine wrap, said the latter succinctly. Did anybody else come and see your master that evening? No, sir. How was the front door fastened? It has a Yale lock, sir. I usually draw the bolts when I go to bed at 11. But last night Miss Geraldine was at the opera, so it was left unbolted. How was it fastened this morning? Miss Geraldine had bolted it when she came in at about 11:45, sir. Then during the evening until 11:45, the door could not be opened from outside without a key. How many latchkeys were there? His lordship has his, sir, and there was one in the hall drawer which Miss Geraldine took last night. Does nobody else in the house have a key? No, sir. Poirot intimated that that was all he wished to ask, and we went in search of the secretary. Miss Carroll was a pleasant woman of about 45. She wore pince-nez, through which a pair of shrewd blue eyes gleamed. Monsieur Poirot. Yes, it was with you I made that appointment for yesterday morning. Precisely, mademoiselle. Well, Inspector Japp, what more can I do for you? Just this. Are you absolutely certain that it was Lady Edgware who came here last night? Of course I'm sure. Where did you see her, mademoiselle? In the hall. She spoke to the butler, then she went along the hall and in at the library door. I was on the first floor looking down. I saw her face distinctly. Japp said, How many keys are there to the front door? 2, replied Miss Carroll promptly. Lord Edgware always carried one. The other was kept in the drawer in the hall. There was a third, but Captain Marsh lost it. Very careless. Did Captain Marsh come much to the house? He used to live here until 3 years ago. Why did he leave? Asked Japp. He couldn't get on with his uncle. He was extravagant. Got into debt. They quarrelled. Lord Edgware forbade him the house. That's all. The room we had interviewed her in was on the first floor. As we left it, Poirot took me by the arm. Remain here, if you will, Hastings. I am going down with Japp. Watch till we have gone into the library. Then join us there. I have long ago given up asking Poirot questions beginning, Why? Like the Light Brigade, mine not to reason why, mine but to do or die. Though, fortunately, it has not yet come to dying. I took up my stand looking over the banisters. Poirot and Japp went first to the front door, out of my sight. Then they reappeared, walking slowly along the hall. I followed their backs with my eye until they had gone into the library, then ran down and joined them. All right, Poirot, I watched, but no one was spying upon you as far as I could see. The eyes of my friend Hastings, said Poirot in gentle mockery. But tell me, my friend, did you notice the rose between my lips? The rose between your lips? I asked in astonishment. You did not observe it, Hastings. No, I said, staring. But then I couldn't see your face. No matter. Well, said Japp, I'd like to see the daughter. She was too upset before for me to get anything out of her. He rang for the butler. Ask Miss Marsh if I can see her for a few moments. It was, however, Miss Carroll who entered the room a few minutes later. Geraldine is asleep, and I gave her something to make her sleep. In any case, there's nothing she can tell you that I can't. What is your opinion of the butler? I don't like him much, replied Miss Carroll, shepherding us into the hall. But I can't tell you why. We had reached the front door. It was up there that you stood, was it not, last night, mademoiselle? Said Poirot, pointing up the stairs. Yes? And you saw Lady Edgware go along the hall into the study? Yes. And you saw her face distinctly? Certainly. But you could not have seen her face, mademoiselle. You can only have seen the back of her head from where you were standing. Miss Carroll flushed angrily. Back of her head, her voice, her walk, it's all the same thing. Absolutely unmistakable. and turning away, she flounced upstairs. "I told you what she was like," cried Brown Martin. "I knew she was going to kill him. I felt it. I was afraid that somehow she'd get away with it. She's devilish clever in a kind of half-wit way. I wanted her to suffer. I wanted her to hang for it." Now, said Jenny Driver. "And the gold box with the initial D and Paris November inside?" said Japp. "She ordered that by letter, and sent Ellis to fetch it. Naturally, Ellis had no idea what was inside the parcel. Lady Edgware also borrowed a pair of Ellis's pince-nez to help in the Van Dusen impersonation. She left them in Carlotta Adams' handbag. Her one mistake." He paused. "And very possibly she borrowed something else from Ellis besides des pince-nez. A corn knife." There was a momentary silence. Then Brown Martin said peevishly, "But look here, what about me? I mean, why bring me here today? Why nearly frighten me to death?" Poirot looked at him coldly. "To punish you, monsieur, for being impertinent. How dare you try and make the games with Hercule Poirot?" There was a pause. Then Jenny Driver laughed. "Serve you right, Brown," she said. She turned to Poirot. "I'm glad as I can be that it wasn't Ronnie Marsh. I've always liked him, and I'm glad that Carlotta's death won't go unpunished. As for Brown, well, I'm going to marry him, and if he thinks he can get divorced and married every 2 or 3 years in the approved Hollywood fashion, he never made a bigger mistake in his life. He's going to marry and stick to me." Poirot looked at her determined chin and flaming hair. "It is very possible, mademoiselle, that may be so. I said that you had sufficient nerve for anything, even to marry a film star." A day or two after that, I was suddenly recalled to the Argentine, so it happened that I never saw Jane Wilkinson again. When I think of her, I always see her the same way, standing in her room at the Savoy, trying on expensive black clothes, with a serious, absorbed face. That was no pose. She was being completely natural. Her plan had succeeded, and therefore she had no further qualms and doubts. Neither do I think that she ever suffered one pang of remorse for the 3 crimes she had committed. I reproduce here a document which she had directed was to be sent to Poirot after her death. It is, I think, typical of that very lovely and completely conscienceless lady. The following morning the telephone rang sharply. My part consisted of saying yes at varying intervals. Finally, I put down the receiver and turned excitedly to Poirot. "That was Japp. Firstly, you're the goods. Secondly, he's had a cable from America. Thirdly, he's got the taxi driver. Fourthly, would you like to come round and hear what the taxi driver says? Fifthly, you're the goods again. And all along, he's been convinced that you'd hit the nail on the head when you suggested that there was some man behind all this." "Sir Japp is convinced at last. Come, Hastings, let us hear what he has to say." We found Japp interrogating an old man with a ragged moustache and spectacles. "Ah, there you are," said Japp. "Well, this man, his name's Jobson, picked up 2 people in Longacre on the night of June the 29th. "That's right," Jobson assented hoarsely. "Lovely night it were, moon and all. The young lady and gentleman hailed me. Gent in white waistcoat and the young lady all in white. Come out of the Royal Opera, I guess." "What time is this?" Japp asked. "Oh, some time before 11. Told me to go to Regent Gate, and be quick. Well, I got to Regent Gate, and the gentleman rapped on the glass, and I stopped. About number 8, that were. Well, the gentleman and the lady got out. The gentleman stopped where he was, and the lady crossed the road and began walking back along the houses the other side. It was about 5 minutes when I heard him kind of exclaim under his breath, and then off he goes too. I looked after him because I wasn't going to be bilked. He went up the steps of one of the houses on the other side and went in," Japp said. Did he push the door open? No, he had a latch key. Well, about 5 minutes later, him and the young lady come out together. They got back into the cab and told me to drive back to Covent Garden Opera House. Paid me handsome. All right, now, just run your eye over these, will you, and tell me if the young lady is among them? There were half a dozen photographs, all fairly alike as to type. That were her, said Jobson. He pointed a decisive finger at Geraldine Marsh. Another sheaf of photographs was handed to him. He looked at them attentively, and then shook his head. Well, I couldn't say not for sure. Either of these two might be him. The photographs included one of Ronald Marsh, but Jobson had indicated 2 other men, not unlike Marsh in type. Jobson then departed, and Japp flung the photographs on the table. Good enough. Bang go a couple of alibis. Clever of you to think of it, Monsieur Poirot. Poirot looked modest. When I found that she and her cousin were both at the opera, it seemed to me possible that they might have been together during one of the intervals. A half-hour interval gives plenty of time to get to Regent Gate and back. The moment he knew Lord Edgware laid such stress upon his alibi, I was sure something was wrong with it. You're a nice, suspicious sort of fellow, aren't you? Said Japp affectionately. Now, look at this cable from New York. They got in touch with Miss Lucy Adams. The letter was in the mail, delivered to her this morning. She allowed the officer to take a copy and cable it to us, and it's as damning as you could hope for. Poirot took the cable with great interest. I read it over his shoulder. Dearest little sister, it's been such a success. Notice is splendid, box office good, and everybody most kind. The other night I met Jane Wilkinson, and she was ever so sweet about my show and my take-off of her. I don't really like her very much, because I've been hearing a lot about her lately from someone I know, and she's behaved cruelly, and in a very underhand way, but I won't go into that now. You know that she really is Lady Edgware. I've heard a lot about him, too, lately, and he's no beauty. He treated his nephew, the Captain Marsh I have mentioned to you, in the most shameful way. Literally turned him out of the house. Captain Marsh told me all about it, and I felt awfully sorry for him. He enjoyed my show very much. He said, I believe it would take in Lord Edgware himself. Look here, will you take something on for a bet? I laughed and said how much. Lucy, darling, the answer fairly took my breath away. $10,000. Why, I said, I play a joke on the king in Buckingham Palace, and risk lèse majesté for that. Well, then, we laid our heads together and got down to details. I'll tell you all about it next week. But anyway, Lucy, darling, whether I succeed or fail, I'm to have the $10,000. Oh, Lucy, what that's going to mean to us. No time for more. Just going off to do my hoax. Lots and lots and lots of love, little sister mine. Yours, Carlotta. We've got him, said Japp exultantly. Yes, said Poirot. His voice sounded strangely flat. You are going to arrest Captain Marsh, Lord Edgware, I mean? Why not? The case against him seems proved up to the hilt. And may I be present? Poirot spoke almost humbly. Certainly you can. I owe the idea to you. I drew Poirot aside. What is the matter, Poirot? I am very unhappy, Hastings. This seems the plain sailing and the above board, but there is something wrong. He looked at me piteously. I was at a loss what to say. Japp had to leave us. Poirot and I turned into Regent's Park, and found a quiet seat. I see the point of your rose between the lips now, but a voice and a walk are just as unmistakable, and the most easily counterfeited. Do you remember, as we sat in the stalls of a theatre? Carlotta Adams! Ah, but then she is a genius. A well-known person is not so difficult to mimic. But I believe she could carry a thing through without the aid of footlights and the distance. A sudden thought flashed into my mind. Carlo, you don't think that... No. Why should Carlotta Adams wish to kill Lord Edgware? She did not even know him. How do you know? There may have been some link between them of which we know nothing. Not that that is precisely my theory. The possibility of Carlotta Adams being involved struck me from the beginning. Now let me put together a few facts for you. Lady Edgware talks of killing her husband. Not only you and I hear this, her maid probably has heard it many times. Brown Martin hears it, and I imagine Carlotta Adams hears it. And there are the people to whom these people repeat it. In that same evening, the excellence of Carlotta Adams' imitation of Jane is commented upon. Who had the motive for killing Lord Edgware? His wife. Now, supposing that someone else wishes to do away with Lord Edgware, here is a scapegoat ready to his hand. On the day when Jane Wilkinson announces that she is going to have a quiet evening, the plan is put into operation. Lady Edgware must be seen to enter the house in Regent Gate. Well, she is seen. She even goes so far as to announce her identity. Ah, c'est Petrosa. It would awaken suspicion in an oyster. Another point. The woman who came to the house wore black. Jane Wilkinson never wears black. Let us assume, then, that the woman who came to the house last night was a woman impersonating Jane Wilkinson. Did that woman kill Lord Edgware? Well, who do you suspect of such a fiendish plot? Ah, that is too early to say. One must go into the question of who has a motive for wishing Lord Edgware dead. He nodded. Whoever it was must have fancied himself pretty safe. Remember, Hastings, but for her change of mind at the last minute, Jane Wilkinson would have had no alibi. She would have been arrested, tried, probably hanged. I shivered. But there is one thing that puzzles me. Why did someone ring her up at Chiswick and immediately ring off? It looks as if someone wanted to be sure of her presence there before proceeding to... what? That was at 9:30, according to Japp. Almost certainly before the murder. The intention, then, seems beneficent. It cannot be the murderer who rings up. The murderer has laid all his plans to incriminate Jane. Who, then, was it? It looks as though we have here two entirely different sets of circumstances. There must be some reason linking them here. My brain leaving. Well, it's no good. I can't believe it of how light it. I do not she committed the murderings. Sublish not the whole no bidden. She have been used innocently, but hold on, Bumpoa. It's good. Applied in the taxi. Once. Applied in the taxi. Dear Monsieur Poirot, I know that you sometimes publish reports of your cases, and I would like everyone to know just exactly how I did it all. It was all very well planned. If it hadn't been for you, everything would have been quite all right. And I'm sure if I send you this, you'll give it plenty of prominence. You will, won't you? I should like to be remembered, and I do think I am really a unique person. Everybody here seems to think so. It began in America when I got to know Merton. I saw at once that if only I were a widow, he would marry me. He's got a strange prejudice against divorce. My husband simply had got to die. And when I saw Carlotta Adams do her imitation of me, I began to see a way. That same evening I saw you, and it struck me that it would be a good idea to send you to my husband to ask him for a divorce. At the same time, I would go about talking of killing my husband, because I've always noticed that if you speak the truth in a rather silly way, nobody believes you. And it's also a good thing to seem stupider than you are. At my second meeting with Carlotta Adams, I broached the idea. I said it was a bet, and she fell for it at once. She was to pretend to be me at some party, and I would pay her $10,000. Several of the ideas were hers, about changing clothes and all that. We couldn't do it in my suite because of Alice, and we couldn't do it at her place because of her maid. So we thought of a hotel plan. I took a pair of Alice's pince-nez. Of course, I realized that she would have to be got out of the way too. It was a pity, but after all, those imitations of hers really were very impertinent. If mine hadn't happened to suit me, I'd have been angry about it. I had some veronal myself, so that was quite easy. It would be better if it could seem that she was in the habit of taking it. So I ordered a box, the duplicate of one I'd been given, and had her initials put on it, and an inscription. I thought if I put some odd initial and Paris, November inside it, it would make it all much more difficult. I wrote for the box, and I sent Alice over to fetch it. She didn't know what it was, of course. Everything went off quite well on the night. I took one of Alice's corn knives, because it was nice and sharp. It was a doctor in San Francisco who showed me just where to stick it in. He'd been talking about lumbar and cistern punctures, and he said one had to be very careful, otherwise one went into the medulla oblongata, where all the vital nerve centers are, and that would cause immediate death. I made him show me the exact place. I thought it might, perhaps, come in useful one day. I told him I wanted to use the idea in a film. It was very dishonorable of Carlotta Adams to write to her sister. I do think it was clever of me to see what a good thing it would be to tear off that one page and leave he instead of she. I think I'm more proud of that than anything else. Everyone always says I haven't got brains, but I think it needed real brains to think of that. I did exactly what I planned. I rather enjoyed it when the Scotland Yard man came. I felt quite safe, because they'd have to believe all those people of the dinner. After that, I felt so happy and contented. I really felt everything was going to go right. Merton wanted to marry me as soon as possible and hadn't the least suspicion. I don't think I've ever been so happy as I was those few weeks. My husband's nephew being arrested made me feel just as safe as anything. The Donald Ross business was just sheer bad luck. Even now, I don't know who Paris was, and I think it's a silly name for a man anyway. I had to do something about Donald Ross quickly, and I did think I was safe after that. Of course, Alice told me you had sent for her and questioned her, but I gathered it was something to do with Brian Martin. I couldn't think what you were driving at. As it was, it came as a complete surprise. It was just uncanny, the way you seemed to know everything I'd done. I only wanted to be happy in my own way, and I never thought you'd be so horribly clever. You didn't look clever. It's funny, but I haven't lost my looks a bit. I look much paler and thinner, but it suits me. They all say I'm wonderfully brave. They don't hang you in public anymore, do they? I think that's a pity. I suppose I must say goodbye now. It's very strange. I don't seem to realize things a bit. I'm going to see the chaplain tomorrow. Yours forgivingly, because I must forgive my enemies, mustn't I? Jane Wilkinson. P.S. Do you think they will put me in Madame Tussauds?